Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is The Late Show with Andre Walker and Asher Gould. And do you know something? I'm not surprised to hear that Gen Z say that they will not fight for the country because they believe it's racist. I wonder what element of racism it is, having to fight for uncontrolled immigration. I'd say that's pretty racist, but I imagine they're going to go another way. We're joined throughout the show by Dr. David Starkey, CBE, historian and broadcaster. And before I do anything else, David, I just want to ask you about this. I call him Richard Harmer, but his real name is Richard Hermer, who's the Attorney General. You know, this guy, Maurice Glassman, Lord Glassman, has said that he should be sacked because he doesn't believe in the rule of law. He believes in the rule of lawyers. Now, that can be quite hard for people to get their heads around, but you think that this is a sort of anti-democratic demagogue, don't you?
No, he's not a demagogue. He's the absolute opposite of a demagogue. Demagogues believe in the people. That's what demos, it comes from the people. He is the opposite. He believes in the rule of a tight, unelected elite, men like him, human rights lawyers, and what he believes is that power should be exercised absolutely irrespective of any ballot, any election, any act of parliament. And what we're seeing is the deliberate attempt at the subversion of any form of democratic control. And it goes along with something else, which is, again, the whole nature of human rights law, which is not commonly understood. You and I here, Ash, us, we constantly talk about two-tier, as though it's, you know, a throwaway line. It's not. It is actually written into human rights. Just let me finish. It's so important. Pause. It is written into human rights law. The human rights law favours minorities over majorities and is anti-democratic, and therefore if you are, and the list is an interesting one, if you're a mental health patient, Kalokane, Ruda Kabana, if you're an oppressed minority, peasant Pakistani, Roma, you are privileged over the law-abiding majority. This is written, so this is not an accident. This is actually now part of our law.
And they've got the judges to back it up to interpret it in an even worse way.
The judges invented this.
So that was going to be my point, because you know what? You just said a second ago, we talk about it, but we don't fully understand it. I'm going to ask you a really simple question, and help me, because I know you're an educator by trade. What has happened? I just want you to answer that simple question. Where
there was a takeover.
Tony Blair just started.
What's happened?
There is a deliberate takeover from 1997, which says the electorate is not to be trusted. It begins essentially with the European Union. Right. The European Union, the whole unity of Europe enterprise, beginning with the Coal and Steel Federation back in the 1950s, is a reflection of the fact that Hitler was supposed to be the result of a popular vote. And from that point onwards, the people are not to be trusted. And the EU begins deliberately as anti-democratic. There's a wonderful story told about the first press conference. It was so secret, the press didn't turn up. And they had to have a second press conference, which was to announce the Coal and Steel Federation, which is a complete fake, because the thing had been organised by the French Foreign Minister, by Schuman, who hadn't even told the French Prime Minister. I mean, it's that degree of secrecy, of a conspiracy of elites, of a determination to make sure that nothing is important is decided by the people.
And the people didn't understand how it worked, which means it's not democratic. And also, you know, the Parliament... Von der Leyen was the only name on the ballot paper, Alex told me. So it's like Saddam Hussein.
Well, I mean...
At least he faked someone else.
No, von der Leyen, it was, again, is purely nominated.
She was the only one on the form to vote for.
It is purely... Well, there isn't really a vote.
No, well, not really.
These things are simply arranged within the elite. But the trouble is, we used to have a completely different way of doing it in Britain.
And when did it... Sorry. OK, so you say 1997 it started. What happened in 1997?
They elected Tony Blair.
No, I mean, I get that.
We took the sovereignty away from the House of Commons.
What you do deliberately, you break up the whole... Do you remember Blair used to talk, that wonderful
Stakeholder.
that smooth voice, cool Britannia. We're a new country. We didn't believe him. He made it a new country. It's not so much Blair, it's actually Gordon Brown. It is perfectly deliberately conceived. You deliberately destroy our sense of nationhood with devolution. When you and I were young, you're not quite as ancient as I am, when you were very young and I was early middle-aged, we were still, the notion of being a member of Britain, or we didn't really talk about Britain very much. We talked about the United Kingdom and whatever, but it was essentially an oath of loyalty to the crown.
Yes.
And then what you do in the 1990s, you replace this with this spurious idea of Britishness, which consists of only two things. It consists of tolerance and diversity.
Yes.
So our very national identity just becomes a flag of convenience. And then everything you do, you shift power in two different directions. You shift it to elite specialist technical bodies, the Monetary Policy Committee of the Bank of England, English Nature, the Climate Change Committee. All important decisions are taken by these bodies. And the thing that's really interesting, have you not listened to what Starmer says? Starmer is contemptuous of politics. He's contemptuous of Parliament. He said Parliament is just a talking shop. He wants Davos. He wants
and of the people he's contemptuous. Calls them far right.
Well, do you know, I want to tell you something, and there's almost no historical fact I could tell you that you wouldn't know already, but I think this one is interesting. In my class in 1995, studying A-level history, we were looking at something to do with France, I forget what it was, and the teacher said, in order to govern France, you have to govern the proletariat, bourgeois, and the bureaucracy. And silence in the classroom. I will tell you that a group of A-level history students in England in 1995 did not know what a bureaucracy was.
And you certainly couldn't have spelled it.
Didn't know.
Still can't.
That's no, you're absolutely right. I mean, what has happened is we had a thing we called the civil service.
Yeah, that's right.
And the whole idea of the civil service was, in theory, it did what ministers told it. Now, the famous Yes Minister tells the other story. But what's happened now, both of you, is quite deliberately the civil service has been put in a position that it actually swears to the crown and the rule of law, which enables it to resist what ministers want to do, because the rule of law...
with Priti Patel.
She's been complaining about it, because the rule of law incorporates human rights, which deliberately militate against the majority, and it incorporates international law, which deliberately denies the importance of the nation.
Is that why we now tend to find people saying whichever way you vote, nothing changes? I mean, I know there was Butskellism and all that in the past.
This is the new version. Butskellism was what happened after we're both revealing our semi-northern origins. Butskellism.
What's Butskellism? I never heard of it.
Butskellism.
What Butskellism?
Oh, you can tell I come north of the Trent. But there it doesn't often slip out. But the Butskellism, there we're getting it right. Butskellism was the agreement on essentially socialist economics between the Tory party and Labour. All that went by the bourne under Thatcher. But what then happened was, with David Cameron and still worse Theresa May, the Conservative Party bought into the whole of that new Labour settlement that removed power to expert bodies and to lawyers with the Supreme Court.
Net zero
and then net zero. And in fact,
but why did they do that?
Because
Is it easy?
I think it's partly easy. I think they actually believed it. Let me test you. Who is it who legislates net zero in at 2050 by
it's
law?
It's a Quango, isn't it?
No.
Miliband.
No. Which Prime Minister is responsible for the legislation?
See, I watch the Davy Starkey YouTube channel, but I tell you,
Theresa May.
It's Theresa May.
Yeah.
Right. Who is
Hard
it?
to guess, though.
Who is it that's even more surprising, responsible for these terrible things, the non-crime hate incident. These things that are used to shut people up. Who is it? No.
The College of Policing.
College of Policing was her.
Yeah, but it's Theresa May.
Right, yeah.
Who is responsible for beginning the case that's going on in Scotland at the moment with the ridiculous doctor, with his makeup and his penis pretending to be a woman.
You got makeup on it? No.
It is a disgusting creature. But that whole business of gender self-identification begins under Theresa May.
Why did Cameron reverse what Blair did? Why didn't he do that?
Because
he sort of
because they deliberately buy into it. The thing that's most shocking.
But we keep hearing, David, but this is too important for politics. Why is that wrong?
It's totally wrong because the only way you can settle a big question is politically. I mean, let me give you an example. Right, I'm gay. Mm-hmm. The reason on the whole...
He's just come out on air.
I know.
Exclusive.
It is such old news. I first came out at LSE in October 1972. So
ahead of the game,
which is I've always been ahead of the game, you fool.
And that was in your Freddie Mercury days, wasn't
my
it?
Freddie Mercury was...
He was ahead of the game
My Freddie Mercury was late 80s and 90s. I was very desirable, as I said. You should have seen me on a motorbike.
I worked with you in the mid-90s.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
But sorry. Go on. You were saying about being gay and whatever.
Why was it settled? Why is being gay a settled issue now? Because it's been decided by repeated parliamentary legislation.
It has.
If you look in America, the whole business of trying to decide abortion by a rigged verdict of the Supreme Court with Roe versus Wade has collapsed.
Yes.
In fact, judges cannot decide moral questions. And the whole problem is you're trying to use the law to do that. Yes. When you write this notion that the business of the law is to protect minorities, what you're saying is judges override the popular instinct. And they even, the most shocking thing is this recent case where...
The chicken nuggets.
No, the much more shocking one in which Gazans have been let in, people from Gaza, this
on the Ukraine
on the Ukraine ticket. And do you know what the judge, a notoriously odd and peculiar judge, I can't remember if it's his wife or his mother or something or another, leading refugee charity and that kind of thing. Do you know what he says? Is their human rights triumph any consideration of the public interest? In other words, you have a lawyer determining what the public interest is.
He's an activist, though. He should be disinterested.
Exactly. In other words, but sorry, gentlemen, the only people who should be determining the public interest is the public through their elected representatives.
What about this argument made by Sir Robert Buckland, who I like? I think he's a very good guy, actually. He says that there are many people, far more people in the legal profession than perhaps we realise, who are squealing because of this and feel that it's hugely damaging to the judicial process, simply because moving moral questions into the court means that the court suddenly is discredited when it wants to take genuine action.
And we're doing things we never used to do before. We've just talked in highly abusive terms about this judge.
Yes.
Suddenly the personality, the political affiliations, the family of judges are in question. But sorry, what happened was there was a coup within the legal profession. It was a particular group of lawyers.
Blair and Tony
No, much more powerful people than that. It was essentially the senior law lord at the time, Tom Bingham, Lord Bingham, and he is responsible for the invention of, in 2006, you can date it precisely, and indeed I will now say it, I've just done a big article on this which will be coming out in the Critic magazine next weekend. There is a completely reinvention of English law, and the trouble is it captured. Professions can be captured.
Yes,
I'm an academic.
All our institutions have been captured.
That's right. But the law has been captured in a peculiarly extreme and dangerous way. And we've now got, there's something really frightening. We don't actually know what the law is anymore.
Yes. No. It's up to the judge to interpret it.
It's up to the judge. It's become completely...
And they're activists.
They're activists. So, or some of them are, some of them aren't. I mean, again...
But of course, it wouldn't matter whether you're an activist or not. If you don't agree with this, I don't agree with this, Asha doesn't agree with this, but if we were judges and we were forced to make moral decisions instead of ruling on the law, it wouldn't matter whether we're activists or not. We'd still bilge it up.
But there'll be more activists, because that's what happens in uni. You don't get in if you've got the wrong views, and actually, eventually, you end up with 100%.
Well, you see, there's something even worse. It has now been ruled that members of the bar, those are the people who will become judges, have to subscribe to DEI. They have to subscribe to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So you're signed up to this process. And again, it's a matter of ambition. This is where you get on. Look at Starmer. Look at Hermer. This is where you make your name. This is where the fat cat rewards are.
Yeah, but we're seeing Trump now doing the other thing, and you know what I mean? It's going to affect it here.
The fashion has shifted.
But we're 4 years behind. What's going to happen?
Or we may never get there.
But I mean, we'll see what's happening in Trump. I mean, I think it was Deloitte Bank or something. In America, they've got rid of it, but here they haven't. If it's not them, I apologise. But some companies, if they're in the US, they're just, picking what fits their narrative.
No. I mean, in America, again, following the lead of the president, major company out for starting.
It was when Facebook began. All the other corporates.
But the really big household names, Coca-Cola, Disney, the big Wall Street firms, BlackRock, they're all pulling back from DEI. But interestingly enough here, where there are those international firms, accountancy firms like Deloitte, Deloitte has pulled back in America, not here. In other words, we're at the thing that's frightening about Britain at the moment is we're now an island. Europe is swinging to the right, America is swinging to the right, Australia is about to, Canada is about to, and we're increasingly on a limb and run. For heaven's sake, our foreign relations are in that safe and steady hands of David Lammy.
The people want to follow the states, but this just shows we haven't got democracy. For years we've wanted to be like that, but we don't have an outlet in the old Tory party.
I mean, that worries me.
I think again, it is the awful problem that until the Conservative Party admits what it got wrong properly, in other words, says what the mistakes we made, we followed this terrible series of Labour policies. And we are as guilty as they are, and until we admit what's gone wrong, we will not establish any kind of foothold. But unfortunately, Badenoch is showing no sign of doing this at all.
Do you support something that I think should have been done in 2010, the Great Repeal Act, and just say we're just going to get rid of... Well, okay, explain.
You wrote it.
No. I invented the idea that you have a Great Repeal Act, and that I coined this phrase a few months ago. We have a Great Repeal Act and a restoration.
Back to 97 laws.
Explain that in full.
Right. The idea would be that we had a revolution before in the 17th century, and there was a restoration, and all the legislation of the Commonwealth, of Cromwell and whatever, was repealed. What we've got to do, we cannot just... Everybody says, let's repeal the Human Rights Act. You can't do it piecemeal, because all this hangs together, and this idea of the rule of law, the Supreme Court, the Equalities Act, the incorporation of the European Convention, the various quangers, they all knit together.
Yes.
And you can't take them apart one by one, because you know what? It's like a monstrous octopus. You try and cut one tentacle off, and all the rest of them come.
So we can pass an act to go back to 1997 laws and then add on.
That would. My view is that that's exactly what you need to do. It would have to be much more than just a single act of Parliament, because you would have to root out all of these decisions in common law. You would have to void. It's an enormous enterprise.
Couldn't you just go to 97 and then add the bits that you do?
Well, no. Hang on a second. I went to Law and Liberty, which is the Federalist Society UK division. And Martin Howe QC said one of the big problems is with legislation now, you've got to go back and look at, what was the reason for this piece of legislation coming in? Well, do we look at the debate in Parliament, which in many cases may not have happened, or the debate in the European Parliament? And he said the way of working this out of the system would take hundreds of years.
That's why you just go back to 97 and
well,
add
I think that what you need to... I think there are two things you need to do. The first is the absolute repeal of the legislation.
Yes.
But the second thing is you would need, and I believe... Sorry, I am not a lawyer, but the people that I've consulted tell me this. You can actually void, in other words, declare null and void decisions of courts.
Yes.
And you would need to do that. It's an enormous enterprise. It will take, but again, you see, look at what's happened, the difference between the first Trump term and the second Trump term, when he was president first and when he's president now. When he was president from the first term, it was chaos.
Yes.
Nothing got done.
Exactly
it was
right.
just a mess. This time round, one particular
His
man...
razor-sharp focus, he knows.
No, it's not it's partly him, but there have been a group of people. I mean, clearly...
He's got better people around him.
They're not better. They are of a simply different order. That speech at the European Conference on AI by J.D. Vance is one of the great political speeches. You watch the confidence, the assurance, the force of that man, the eloquence, the precision of what he was saying. It was completely astonishing.
He's got all the best people around
But
him,
you've got
hasn't
an astonishing group of backroom boys. There's a man particularly called Stephen Miller, and he has been the one who has produced most of these executive orders. And I've actually, there's been this astonishing way in which you've turned legislation or executive orders into theatre. You know, he's been signing these publicly. He's been chucking the pens into the crowds or giving them to people.
Yes.
It's become a performing art.
He's a great showman.
But he's a showman, but he's a showman with a purpose. This is like a Roman emperor. But the thing that struck me was a lot of these documents have actually been put online. They're astonishingly well written.
Yes.
And there's one that actually, which we should all
Well, I'll
be...
tell you what, why don't we leave it there at astonishingly well written? Let's go to a break
Stay
and then let's
tuned
just
and find out
continue this conversation
what that
because, look, David's one of the most fascinating guys in the country today.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, it's the Late Show with Andre Walker and Asher Gould. And do you know what? We're just not going to waste any time because we've got Dr. David Starkey in the studio. And David, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about executive orders, but Perthshire Pete has tweeted me and said, could you ask David whether we should start a peaceful revolution? Basically, this idea of getting rid of the government by some sort of protest or whatever.
A national strike, everyone
No,
down
I mean,
tools.
I think, you see, I don't want... I'm that most boring of old fart things. I'm a conservative. I actually believe that the fact that we have avoided revolution uniquely in Europe since the 17th century is something that matters.
What about Chartism? Was that a half revolution?
Oh, no, you see, that's interesting. Chartism there were these vast demonstrations in the 1830s. People, because there was a parliament then, there were elections then, but the electorate was very, very narrow. But Ash, the Chartists were not campaigning to bring things down. What the Chartists were campaigning for was to be part of the system. They were wanting the vote in exactly the same way that when the women rose, when the suffragettes, the whole business of throwing yourself in front of racehorses and all sorts of things, they were not wanting to bring it down.
But we want the vote, really. We've lost our democracy. Our vote doesn't count, so it's similar in that way.
Yes, but they were wanting to be part of it.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is, I don't think we want to tear it all down. There's an element of reform, there's an element of Matt Goodwin, there is Nigel on a bad day that talk in those terms. I think it's desperately dangerous. I think the fact that we have had we have the oldest political system in the world, and for most of its centuries it's served as really...
Just can I interrupt you? Because, look, I just want to clarify this, because people keep asking about this. One of your concerns is that if you, me, and a lot of other people got together one day, or got together tomorrow, and wrote the United Kingdom a constitution, it would almost certainly reflect what we were thinking in this moment, and that would be, in of itself, would not illustrate what the country wants.
No, I think generally speaking, we before 1997, we by and large worked.
Yes.
This. Remember, what we're talking about, constitution, it's got too many syllables. It's a big, grand word. But what we're saying is, effectively, everything is wrong. There are words that are impolite, which I shall not use even at this late hour, of what we've got. Everything is designed to stop things happening.
Yes.
And that leads to this terrible malaise. It leads to our economic malaise, our social, political immigration. They're all part of this same thing. This thing, we can manifestly see we took a disastrously wrong turn.
Yes.
And there are two ways you deal with it. There is the revolutionary route, and there is what I want, which is a restoration, which is deliberate going back. Because I actually believe that history isn't a straitjacket. You remember, this was Blair. Blair constantly talked about our history as a kind of straitjacket, as something fuddy-duddy. Wasn't it a shame, really, that we hadn't had a nice, fashionable revolution? Wouldn't it have been nice if we had a national day to celebrate cutting off, and he wasn't quite sure whether it was the head of King Charles I, II, or III in the future, cutting a king's head off and whatever. See, I don't think that sort of thing is a good idea.
No.
Look at France. France has never, ever established legitimacy.
No.
Since the revolution. You've had...
It's never settled as a country.
Never settled into anything. 5 republics, 2 empires, 2 monarchies. There's only a single successful revolution in the world, and that's the American. And the American Revolution changed as little as possible apart from the bonds with Great Britain.
Yes.
The American Constitution is a very lightly edited version of the British Constitution. The president is George III without his wig. When of course nowadays, bearing in mind the elaborate hairstyle of our current president, maybe he's got a wig again. And again, you kept common law. You kept the names of things. All the separate states had their own representative assemblies. You even keep the name of governor. For each state.
That's a good point.
So you which is astonishing. It's the title of a king's representative, but you just keep it. You keep the thing going, and that's why it works. And I think we want that sort of very light shift.
What happens with the people that are messaging in now who are critical of you for presumably remaining a Conservative Party member and not becoming a member of Reform?
I'm trying to explain why to everybody. I'm very Reform friendly. I'm advising everybody, Conservative, Reform, and whatever, on the Constitution. I sympathise with these people. Sorry, I deeply, deeply sympathise with anybody who's given up on the Conservative Party. I think that its performance in the last 14 years was a disgrace
It's caused permanent damage, though,
It
hasn't
has
it?
caused permanent damage to the party and to the country. I think the failure of Badenoch to acknowledge this frankly and to break with that past, frankly, is a disaster.
She won't leave the ECHR, which is ridiculous.
Well, I mean, the problem is she's reluctant even to do that. And as I keep pointing out, you can't just pull out of the ECHR. This structure pulls you back in the whole of the time.
Well, it's binding on our law. We can take that out, can't we, of our law, and have our own human rights.
But the problem is, it would make no difference, Ash, because there's a whole network of cases that would arrive at the same... Look, these judges, which are deciding that somebody can be kept in the country. I mean, the maddest decision. Well, we've
the chicken nuggets one.
Well, there's a chicken nuggets decision, but the maddest decision surely is somebody cannot be deported because they've joined a terrorist organisation.
Yeah,
that's deranged.
Well, no. Actually, remember, she has now been proved to have not been an actual terrorist. And so they're now, ironically, they're saying the Home Office was saying, let's deport her because we've proved she's not a terrorist.
But you see,
it's just
it's complete Alice in Wonderland. It's lunatic.
Can I ask you
but
this?
Sorry, just one second. That is not in the European Convention. These are our judges putting a very elaborate and peculiarly English, because it's not even British, the law is English construction on these things, which is why, if you look at continental Europe, the French and the Italians have had much more success in getting rid of unwelcome immigrants than we've done.
Well, it's not binding on their law. They use EU law.
Well,
the ECHR isn't binding on that.
It is in precisely the same way, but they have not gold-plated into their law. That's the difference.
But isn't what do you say to me if I say?
No, sorry. Just again.
If I say that Kemi Badenoch is Ted Heath and Nigel Farage is Margaret Thatcher, what's your response to that?
No. The Ted Heath is, I'm afraid, Rishi Sunak. And she is no Margaret Thatcher.
No.
I mean that is the whole point. I mean the important thing. Look, let's get this right. The important thing about two things. The comparison is a really useful one of Heath and Thatcher. One of the reasons that Thatcher was able to represent a clean break was that Edward Heath was so rude to her. The fact that he threw this gigantic, decades-long sulk made absolutely clear that there was a break in Conservative Party history. But the other thing about Thatcher was intellectually confident. She had advisors like Keith Joseph who did exactly what we're talking about now. In 1975, Keith Joseph was celebrating the 50th anniversary of this. Keith Joseph said, I'd called myself a conservative. I'd been a member of a government that called itself conservative. It didn't do anything conservative, and I didn't do anything conservative. And you reconstruct conservatism. But what Thatcher does and Keith Joseph do, they reconstruct conservatism simply as free market economics.
Yes.
And that's
Trump's very similar to Thatcher in that way. As a conviction, came in, did what he believed. And I haven't seen that before, apart from maybe with Thatcher.
I think the remarkable thing about Trump, again like Thatcher, you've actually got somebody confident enough to do something.
In their own beliefs. They believe what they do.
No, just to do something. We have not seen, I think, again, and his have been far more dramatic than Thatcher. You've suddenly seen somebody who understands power.
Yes.
Who has power, knows what to do with power, and has got a will and a personality that can carry it through. You see, this is why we were talking about young people, these strange people, that we don't really know anything about, that speak this funny language. Well, I was talking to a great... In it like.
That's out of date
now,
a lot
alike, and a lot of glottal stops. Yeah. Anyway, I was in Cambridge where there were a few of the glottal stops last night. But many young people, as well as saying we won't fight for our country, they've been saying they're deeply disenchanted with democracy, and they're saying they would prefer dictatorship.
Yes.
What I think they really mean is they want a government that's got the confidence to do something.
They want a Trump or a Thatcher.
But you just threw in an enormous hint there, didn't you? Or maybe you were being
I didn't notice it. What was it?
Much more explicit, where you said about Margaret Thatcher and boiling down everything to economics, that presumably implies that you believe that one of the big failures of the Conservative Party for 50 years is their failure to stand up for community.
I think to stand up for all sorts of other things, to stand up for the idea, fully to stand up for the idea of nationhood.
Yes.
To stand up for our history, to stand up for traditions, to stand up for, dare one say it, an identity which is recognisably British, or whatever that means. And all of those, again, you see that the whole behaviour of somebody like George Osborne has been effectively like a rather simple-minded accountant.
Yes.
If it sort of helps to balance the books, let's do it. Here he is now, chairman of the British Museum. Oh, well, why don't we just...
They're short-termists, aren't
why
they?
don't we just get rid of... But they're the people who are literally, again, the Oscar Wilde remark, they know the price of everything and the value of nothing.
Yeah.
Conservatism has become merely another branch of that kind of easy wheeler dealing. The left is internationalist. The Conservative Party is free tradist, which means everything becomes lowest common denominator.
Could a new Prime Minister do what Trump, just before, well, we'll answer after the break, but could a Prime Minister, when they got in, do what Trump has
Only
done?
if they do what I'm talking about. And
But do they have the powers to do these executive...
Yes, if you command a majority in the House of Commons, you can do pretty well anything. But what they would have to do is exactly what Starmer didn't. You would have to campaign honestly, and you'd have to win a large majority on an honest manifesto. If you have that,
Like Trump.
the political system bends in front of you.
OK, we're going to continue with this straight after the break.
Across the UK on DAB Plus.
I literally couldn't tell that he was ever right-handed. He went to try and throw right-handed to show me. Couldn't, because it was ours.
There are a couple of players.
I answered that question.
Yeah, this is the Late Show with Andre Walker and Asher Gould. Yeah, I'll tell you what, just building on from what you said, it is fair to say, though, isn't it, and maybe I'm wrong, that Margaret Thatcher in '79 was fairly, it wasn't the manifesto that we think of from Margaret Thatcher. It wasn't as radical as 83 or 87. And so is it possible at the next election for somebody to go as strongly into what you're talking about, a great repeal, as they might want to?
Remember...
Do you see what I'm getting at?
I do. I mean, but Thatcher was in a completely different position. She did not have a reform.
Right.
The whole rules of politics have changed with the success of reform. I mean, reform now is doing better than any third party has done consistently since the Liberal Party was overtaken by the Labour Party.
Yes.
Now, that's only in the opinion polls. It's not yet translated itself into an actual election.
How will that manifest at the general election? Because they're going to have to merge or agree to not do the same seats, aren't they?
We don't yet know. I mean, there's no point in even trying to anticipate that. I mean, what happens will depend entirely on the actual political situation.
Although I have to say, you know, I've seen some of the polling, and I've got, if you like, two homes. I've got where my family are from in Lee in Greater Manchester, and where I live now in Windsor. And it has to be said that Reform are massively ahead in Lee. And, of course, are polling 2% or 6% or whatever it is in Windsor. There is a geographical split.
There is indeed, yeah, that's right.
Which people forget.
I mean, what is effectively what Reform is doing? It's taking over the old Red Wall.
Yes.
In other words, I gather if you looked at their seats in the last election, in other words, the July election, they came second in 89 Labour seats.
That's right.
It's a hugely high figure. Also added, slightly different, are the decaying seaside resorts, the Medway towns of the south, that sort of thing. Apparently Wales very strongly. But it's regional.
There's going to be a massive turnout, isn't there?
See, my instinct is, I think that there's an element of conservative collapse that's required as well. Because if you were to go to somewhere like, I mean, Leeds a bad example actually, but you go to a place like Wigan or Makerfield next door, and the Conservatives have literally never won those seats at all. Therefore, the Conservatives are considered a wasted vote. However, you know, people do not believe that Reform has the glass ceiling the Conservatives have.
Well,
so effectively, that the alliance that Asher is talking about is being done by ordinary people on the ground.
Yes, I mean, it's an informal version of what Farage did in 2019.
Exactly right.
And I think something like that is quite likely to happen. I mean, again, there was an informal understanding in the last election, which is why the Tories did so badly in the south, between Labour and the Liberals.
Yes.
That they effectively, it didn't actually stand down, but they pulled back on campaigning. And effectively, those who were opposed to the Tory party threw their votes towards, you know, depending on the area,
whoever it was,
whether it be Labour or even Green.
If the Tories and Reform would have done that at the last election, they would have had a majority. Apparently,
they would. But remember, on the whole, Ash, governments lose elections. Labour did not win the last election. Everybody and in my view, let me say this again to all those who've been criticising me, the Conservatives rightly lost the last election.
Yes.
And they lost it appropriately, and it was the right punishment for a disgraceful stretch in office.
But we all lost out because it was Labour, obviously, that were going to get in.
And we all lost out because I was one of the very few voices that predicted just how dreadful Starmer and the Labour Party would be.
You and Peter Hitchen.
That's right. And most people thought that, it was just, you know, it would... Again, the problem is the model of the uni-party. Yes, in some ways it's a uni-party, but when you've got the Labour in, they actually believe fully in this rubbish, rather than the Tories just, on the whole, knocking along with it. And it produces something infinitely more poisonous, as we're seeing. I mean, I think the other thing that we should have been talking about is, you know, Theresa May and the Nasty Party. What we're discovering is just how utterly nasty the Labour Party is. Yes. All these revelations about the WhatsApp group, even somebody, you know, now a respectable member of the cabinet like Wes Streeting, his WhatsApps going back, admittedly, 10 or so years, are of a degree of violence had been made public during the riots would have sent him straight to jail.
Yes.
It's this extraordinary thing. If you have this belief in your own absolute virtue, as the left tends to do, it leads to the most astonishing levels of sheer personal nastiness.
But I honestly believe that conservatism is about love for community, love for family, love for religion, whereas the left is about hate. But anyway, talking of love versus hate, we're going to go on a break now, but we're going to talk once again to a lady who's continually being harassed by the police for praying silently outside abortion clinics. More next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
OK, this is The Late Show with Andre Walker and Asher Gould, and we've been joined by Dr David Starkey throughout the show, but we're now going to talk to a lady who has been, she's been targeted again this week by the West Midlands Police for praying silently in her head next to an abortion centre. Isabel Vaughan Spruce, rather. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, yes.
Explain what's happened.
So just over a week ago, I went outside the abortion centre, which I do every week, and just to silently pray there. Nobody going past would be aware of what I was doing from looking at me. And the police approached me, and whereas in the past they've actually taken issue with my prayers and I've had to go to court to resolve that situation, they now just say that me existing in that area is a problem, and they were telling me to leave.
They're basically thought police. They are, as the caption says.
Yeah, and the issue is that I've already, like I say, I was arrested, I went to court, I was re-arrested. They were giving me various tickets telling me I'd be fined. In the end, I had to actually take legal action against the police, and I received compensation in an out-of-court settlement for £13,000, and I thought that was the end of it, and yet still they're coming out
Are you going to start legal action again with the help of the Freedom of Speech Union, or are you going to take again and win another 13,000?
I am looking at all my legal options at the moment. I mean, it was never about me being out of pocket. I wasn't trying to get money out of it. I just want the officers to behave professionally, and the way they're behaving at the moment.
Isabel, why not stop doing it?
Well, To me, it's very important for my faith. I'm a Catholic, and so for 20 odd years, I go there and I pray. So as a Catholic, to me, something very important is to think about the passion of Christ, which is the suffering and death of Jesus. And for Catholics, it's actually, place is important. Now, I know for some people it might not matter at all where they pray, and of course God hears my prayers wherever I am, but place is important in as much as, you know, Catholics will go on pilgrimage to somewhere where something happened thousands of years ago to pray there.
But a Catholic does not believe the soul of the unborn child is anywhere other than heaven, do they?
So to finish what I was explaining when I said about how I like to meditate on the passion of Jesus, I believe that abortion centres are like the modern day Calvary, if you like. I believe in a mystical way that is where Jesus suffers today at abortion centres. So I believe, you know, because innocent children, as in very innocent preborn children, that's where their lives are ended. And sadly, obviously, a lot of women suffer at abortion centres too. I believe that is, in a mystical way, a modern-day Calvary.
Aren't they breaching your human rights, though, by doing this? Aren't they breaching your, you know, freedom of expression, freedom to pray? Isn't it against the ECHR?
This isn't what the law is stating. What they're doing isn't what the CPS guidance states either. You know, it's not even about freedom to speak. It's actually about just freedom to think what I want.
Can I put this to David, because this is this very American idea, and I don't know what you think the context is in terms of the United Kingdom, but we have not got people with megaphones screaming abuse at people outside abortion centres. We've got two things. We've got people praying, and we've got people handing out leaflets saying, we are willing to help you if you don't want to have an abortion. Personally, I'd have the people who are helping not have an abortion inside the abortion clinic, because I think that would be a more sensible way of doing it. But we are where we are. What on earth are we doing in a country like Britain where you have an exclusion zone where you can't even talk to somebody if the government says they don't like it?
Inform me now, I'm going to admit ignorance. There was a proposal, as it were, to protect abortion clinics from demonstrations. Has that been legislated?
Yeah, that went through.
Yeah, so Isabel, perhaps you can explain to everyone precisely what the problem is.
Can you explain? You are actually breaking the law, aren't you?
No.
Why have I misunderstood? In other words, tell me what the law is. But the law does provide that there should not be demonstrations outside abortion clinics.
She's silent and praying in her head.
Yeah, so there's two different laws at play. First of all, one is the local law, which is called a PSPO, a Public Space Protection Order, and that's around 5 abortion centres in England. And that would slightly vary depending on the area you go, and that would prevent certain types of protests and things happening outside abortion centres. And then we've also got the national buffer zone, or safe access zone, or whatever it's called, and that's outside every abortion centre in the country. And that also prevents certain things happening, but it doesn't prevent people from going into the area. People live inside.
Sorry, can I just again? You're educating me, and I'm sure educating our listeners, which is what all this is about. Are these simply orders that are imposed by local authorities or by the police, or has there actually been legislation creating this stuff? Is there an act of parliament that specifies this?
So there's two different types of law. There is, one of them is the PSPO, the Public Space Protection Order, which is a local law that's brought in just with the local council and the local police.
I understand.
Working together. And then there's
I think that's similar to shutting a street, effectively.
Yeah.
There's also the national law, which came in at the end of October last year. And that's something that's brought in by the government. It was
right. Now let's just talk about that, because this is the interesting thing. See, what I think is happening, Isabel, is this: we're seeing two completely different moralities clashing. You are a particular form of Catholic morality. But what you're doing is the abortion clinic, and it's this bizarre thing which we saw beginning in America. Abortion clinics have become kind of temples of the new morality.
Yes.
I mean, can you imagine reproduction rights, these things that women were clamouring for in America, is now the right to abort your child?
Yes.
We've had this extraordinary inversion of values. So we're seeing, in what you're doing, Isabel, we're seeing a clash of two completely different worlds. And the thing that's frightening is that the whole formal apparatus of our society, the police, the law, is on the side of what most of us would find. I mean, I don't know about you, abortion is probably necessary. But it's not something that wants to be sacralized. It's not something that wants to be held up.
That's what I don't understand, David. The way that people think, you know, that my nieces would come up to me and say, Uncle Andre, you must fight for the greatness of life so I can have an abortion.
Isn't it? That's right. It's deranged.
Yes.
But it is the problem that our new morality is an awfully frightening inversion of the old one. That, you know, the idea of love of country now becomes, well, you should really hate your country.
Yeah.
It is all through the looking glass.
There's a real looking glass
Derangement
about
syndrome.
a kind of derangement.
I mean, is that the way it feels, Isabel, that suddenly everything in your country where you pay taxes has created a whole new morality, and you're on the wrong side of it?
I think there is certainly a lot of truth in what you're saying. And in fact, I think you're almost touching on the spiritual issue here, which I think is very much evident. I think abortion is a spiritual issue on one level. And I think there is certainly a spiritual battle going on here, which many people who are certainly Christians would recognise.
You would say it was diabolic, wouldn't you?
I would, yes. I would say it was diabolic.
That's exactly.
I believe that human...
No. You would. I mean, that's all we need to know. You think it's diabolic. The other side think.
But the point is, my presence there isn't saying anything. I am just simply standing on a street corner, which many other people do. So outside the abortion centre, you will sometimes see people standing having a smoke before they go in. Sometimes they're standing there waiting for a taxi. Maybe it's a boyfriend waiting for his girlfriend. People just.
There's also this other, but Isabel, there's also this other element, David, which I've seen, and I saw under Tony Blair, and we were talking about 1997, the creation of the Supreme Court. We never seem to get beyond America's got one. You know, the diminution of the Lord Chancellor. Well, the Americans don't have a Lord Chancellor. You know, we must protect abortion clinics. Well, why? Because, I mean, if you think, I mean, Isabel is either a harmless nutter or a harmless Christian, but she's not. But
she's bearing witness as she's describing it. I wasn't brought up, Isabel. I wasn't brought up a Catholic, but I was brought up in some ways a much more extreme religious faith. I was brought up a Quaker. Right. I know all this language. I rejected it quite deliberately, but I know it, and as a professional historian of the Reformation period, I really got to understand it. You are bearing witness to an opposed set of values. Your mere presence there is a reproach to those people.
Right.
I think they know what they're doing. I think you know what you're doing. You are consciously setting your face against a new morality that you regard as an immorality. It's genuine. What's going on there is a genuine tragedy. I mean, the proper definition of tragedy is a clash of two moral systems, and there are two moral systems, and we've been listening to one of them.
Absolutely, Isabel. I'll give you the final sentence, but it will have to be a sentence.
Well, I just ask people to pray about this issue then, because I do believe it's a spiritual issue. And I don't say I'm going there to do a public witness, but as a private individual, I believe I've got a right to be on a public street. I'm a member of the public.
OK, well, I have to say, Isabel Vaughan Spruce, my view is that you're doing absolutely no harm whatsoever. But I think I agree with David Starkey that that if you are people who are pushing forward for a new morality, if you are somebody who wants to tear down the traditional values of this country, then you will not like what she's doing.
Can you stay for 10 minutes for the press preview? We'll hold your chariot back for you. Yes.
Chariot indeed. OK, this is Andre Walker and Asher Gould. 03444991000.
Dr. Dave as well. At Andre JP Walker.
At Virtual Ash. We'll be back in a moment with the press preview.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is the press preview with Andre Walker, Asher Gould and Dr. David Starkey. And I guess we're starting with the Daily Star.
Yeah, we have Chancellor's Pinocchio CV in full. Rachel from accounts. Turns out she wasn't even accounts. She was sort of the help desk, and they're not even very good at that for much help. From 19...
She was in complaints.
Complaints,
I think it's very appropriate.
It is, yeah.
I've got to say one thing though, in defence of Rachel Reeves.
What?
I would rather
Traitor.
have been.
Yeah.
I would rather have been in the complaints department, help desk at HBOS than been an economist at HBOS at just the time they were bilging the.
But that shows just how stupid she was, wasn't she? You know, from 52 to 2022, I was the Queen of England. This is apparently what she wrote. In 1966, she scored a hat. I scored a hat trick to help England win the World Cup.
I think this is called exaggeration.
In 24, I'm learning my.
We know
anyway.
Ashley's a bit dim, but
how dare you? But only compared to you. I mean, everyone is. Chancellor Rachel Reeves' online CV exaggerated how long she'd spent working at the Bank of England. Yeah, apparently she only did 5 and a bit years. And
so David, you were saying earlier, and in fact, actually, I'm going to steal this because I know that you mentioned this on another podcast or on your YouTube channel. And by the way, subscribe to David's YouTube channel. It really is superb. And I'm not just saying this. I know I always suck up to you, but it's because I genuinely like the things you say. But you made the point that she's plagiarised everything she's ever done, and her economic policy was plagiarised from the United States of America. And you were expressing concerns that you thought that they had to talk her up in order to make it sound like the Starmer government would have an economic policy.
That's exactly right.
Of some veracity.
The reason that this is not just casual lying. This is deliberate lying with a purpose. If you like, there was the famous. It's called, what is it? Smoked salmon charm offensive with the city last spring, in which they were trying to persuade the City of London that Labour was genuine and responsible. And she actually borrows from Janet Yellen, who had been first of all the chairman of the Federal Reserve, and then actually becomes the Secretary of the Treasury under the Biden administration, in other words, the American equivalent of the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Janet Yellen had done something which she called modern supply-side economics. And what that really amounted to was spending enormous amounts of money on public works, on education, on DEI, on transport, on green.
Yes.
And of course, it's really just old-fashioned public works. It's old-fashioned.
It's what Gordon Brown thought.
Well, no, we never did it. We never did it in quite that way. But it's really going back to the New Deal and whatever. Now, in America, it sort of worked, because you could do that in America, because America is a reserve currency, and they borrowed trillions of dollars.
Yes.
The reason that America has had the much higher inflation than we've done is the enormous borrowing of the Biden government. So what she proposed was a version of that that kind of Keynesian economics, where you throw lots and lots of money at public works and green and all the rest of it. But of course, we haven't the money to do it. So it was always a fiction. And do you know what? It was Jason Cowley of the New Statesman who came up with a really brilliant formulation. He said she was just Bidenomics without the bucks. So in other words, Labour was elected on a completely false prospectus. And what we're doing at the moment, we're making hers just sound like a series of personal choices.
Yes.
And in fact, it was a deliberate campaign to deceive business.
Doesn't she realise she's failed, though, now?
Well, she must, but what I think we're just presenting it as a kind of, she lied about her.
But
CV.
they double down when they fail. That's the thing.
But it's much bigger than that. This was a deliberate deception of the electorate and a deliberate deception.
But
of business.
she has done one thing before we go on to the Daily Mail. She's changed, and forgive me for having to read my notes, but she's brought in per snuffle which is that instead of looking at the public sector net debt, she wants the public sector net debt with financial liabilities included, which means that she's going to mortgage the student loan books and the pension fund.
What she's doing is, it's exactly like Gordon Brown. She's taking what are debts and pretending that they're assets.
Yes.
I mean, what we're doing is we are deliberately falsifying our public accounts in order to borrow even more money. It's rather like saying, because I've got a mortgage, do you know what? I've got a huge asset.
Yeah. And our interest rate is £100 billion a year, just the interest we're paying on the loan.
We are. I don't think it's quite as high as that, but we're spending as much. We're spending it in proportionately exactly what the Americans do. We spend like the Americans. Our interest rate payments are the same as all the money we spend on defence.
Wow.
Right, the Daily... Oh, look, there's Mike Graham. Don't forget, put your top on, Mike. He'll be coming up after this in the morning, listening in the morning. Trump accused of appeasement over peace talks with Putin. Well, I think... To be honest, you can't win a war against a guy who's just going to throw. He's just got he just throws his men into the grinder, doesn't he? And it's oligarchs basically fighting over control. We have to end it.
I've got an unusual concern, David, which you may or may not share. I worry about the collapse of the Russian Federation and what the Chinese will do in terms of Manchuria, Vladivostok and that sort of area. Would there be an invasion by China of Russia? Is that completely mad?
Oh, I mean, if the Russian Federation disintegrated, they would certainly take over. I mean, remember, Russia in the 19th century, when China is at its weakest, seizes huge parts of northern mainland China. And I think
it's all switched, doesn't it?
And that's right. And I think certainly if the Russian Federation disintegrated, at the moment the Chinese don't need to do it. Remember, what's happened, and again, this is something that just our press does not report. Because of the war in the Ukraine, the world is fragmented into separate blocks.
Yes.
So there is the old Sino-Soviet, the Russian-China bloc, but with, of course, North Korea, with Iran, increasingly with South Africa, increasingly with Brazil, with
India involved,
a very, very friendly India. Again, we're seeing the whole structures of international finance breaking up. You're now, again, it's a result of sanctions of Russia. People don't realise this. They have now created a new method of wiring money. They have their own structures of credit cards. They can make their own electronic payments.
But oil is in dollars, and that's the important thing. China want to switch that round, don't they?
Well, I don't think it really makes very much difference because there is an huge illicit trade in oil.
Yes, there is.
There's a gigantic illicit trade.
I thought when the Indian High Commissioner spoke at the Oxford Union and he said, look, when you put sanctions on Russian oil, what did you think we were going to do? Stop using oil completely?
No, they buy it cheap.
And he said the reality is you've taken the supplies we used to have and we've taken the supplies that you used to have. It's simple as that.
What should happen with Trump and Putin, Ukraine and Russia? Do you think Trump's right? Or should they just continue with the war? It's not really appeasement, is it?
The problem is the war isn't really a war. It's a war of attrition.
Yes.
It's being fought with a different degree of determination on either side. The way it's going at the moment is Russia will inevitably just creep ahead.
Yeah,
but they couldn't lose. I mean, we knew from the beginning Russia could just throw men, and it's a nuclear power.
To begin with, it looked as though Russia was going to lose extremely badly.
But they're a nuclear power. How could they lose?
Well, because
no, there were three stages, David. There was, if you like, the Blitzkrieg failure.
There was total failure. Total failure.
Where actually suddenly everybody went, oh my God, the Ukrainians might do something. That was probably day 4. I think then what happened was just the sheer weight of Russia pushing.
And do it exactly what it did under Stalin.
Exactly.
I mean, you had exactly the same thing in the First World War. You had the initial collapse of the Soviet front, the sweeping in, right up to Stalingrad. I mean,
including Kursk.
Right. Well, of course, the whole of the Ukraine was conquered. Was conquered by the Nazis, and then Stalin does exactly what was done against Napoleon, and the vast masses of the Russian population are just thrown.
But if Putin lost the war, he'd be dead himself, so he can't quit.
Of course. But again, we have not fought a real war.
No.
In other words, there's been a war of subsidies. There's been a war of sanctions. We have talked big and acted small.
Germany have still been buying gas off the enemy, paying for it.
But what I think is most shocking, I mean, we should all just pause here, is the extent to which we have abused Putin. We've talked about the need to arraign him before the International Criminal Court. And we would not survive half a day of warfare against Russia.
Yes.
The extent of our folly, of our arrogance, of our strutting as though we were still a great imperial power. And if we want to perform as an imperial power, we have to have serious troops. If not, you shut up.
I had a friend who was in the Navy, and he said it was not unusual for warships patrolling the British seaways to have one missile and nothing else.
Can't afford anymore.
Unbelievable.
Right, Daily Express. A man can change his name, grow his hair, wear a skirt like us on a Wednesday. It does not give him the right to use women's spaces or to force people to pretend he is a woman. That's from Maya Forstater, Sex Matter Chief Executive Rights. Things are turning, the tables are turning since Trump got in and he's banned DEI from everywhere. What's your view on this? Is it all going to start tumbling down here? It already seems to feel like it's at the beginning.
I think that we've seen the high watermark of all of this stuff. The tide is turning. The tide is beginning. The tide is beginning to turn. The extraordinary scenes in that dispute with the NHS in Scotland, lunatic performance of the would-be woman doctor. But you see, it's the problem with the whole left. The left believes in the magic of words. Again, it was part of that conversation that I was having with Isabel. The left is essentially a religious movement.
Yes.
When you actually think about self-identification as a woman, it's a transsexualism is a kind of magic.
Yes.
It's saying, because I say I am a woman, I am a woman.
Well, words is correct. I mean, they say gender and sex are different. No, they're not. They're just the same, different words for the same thing.
It's playing with language.
They've decided it's no different.
It's playing with language. But you see, religion does exactly the same thing. I hope Isabel isn't listening anymore. But the Catholic doctrine of transubstantiation, that by uttering hoc est corpus, the magic words over the elements of the mass, of the bread and the wine, you turn them into flesh and blood.
Newspeak.
Well, no, it's not. It's very old speak. But it's the left has a religious attitude. Again, this government's attitude to growth. They don't actually do anything to bring growth about. It's rain dance economics.
They've made science illegal in some ways, like the old church.
Is there an element with what's going on with the trans movement? Is there an element of and certainly the listeners to this show, many of them will say that there has been a deliberate attempt to smash the family and to smash the community because people in power believe that they can't build what they want to build as long as the family is strong.
I think that's going too far. And again, you see, one of the things where I think we've all got this wrong is all this talk about cultural Marxism and the march through institutions. I don't think it's quite that at all. I think that the thing that's peculiarly dangerous about Britain is the capture of the law.
Yes.
And this is peculiar to Britain. The reason that we seem to be sticking in this longer than other people is because of what we were talking about in the first segment of the show. And again, if you look at what I was saying about Tom Bingham, this notion of prioritising minorities, who are the current fashionable minorities? The transsexual on the one hand and Palestinians and Gazans on the other.
Yes.
And they're allowed to do no wrong.
Australia and Canada probably have it as bad as us, or worse in many. And Ireland, maybe.
Ireland actually now probably has it even worse in some respects. And again, you see, the Irish case is a really interesting one. Why has Ireland gone in this direction? Well, partly because of the complete collapse of the Catholic Church, but it's also because, of course, Irish... And why, again, the Scot Nats? Let's talk about the Scot Nats, because it's really interesting. Why has all this gone so much madder under people like Sturgeon? Right, let me explain. Because Scottish nationalism is really a peculiarly vicious racism. It's anti-English racism. Yeah. But what you want to do, you've got to pretend that it's not.
Yes.
You've got to pretend that it's modern, caring, civic nationalism and whatever. And the way you do that is by dressing it up with all of these ultra-fashionable causes. And the delight of Ireland, having done this, of course, is that they've suddenly, they kicked what was left of the British ascendancy out. And what have they saddled themselves with? I laugh my head off every day at the fate of Ireland. If there's any group of people who deserve it, it's that lot.
Well, I will say, you old softy. That is Dr. David Starkey, and this is the press preview. David's going to leave us now, but we will be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is Talk, and this is the press preview with Andre Walker, Asher Gould, and we're joined now by Alex Dyke to be our guest co-host for the next couple of minutes. He is a former BBC presenter. And Alex, before we say anything else, what do you make of this story that the BBC has issued 40 million enforcement letters over the BBC licence?
Well, it's a staggering number. Good evening, guys.
Good evening.
I actually got one. There's 24 million television licenses out there now across the UK. They're down by 500,000. So that's 80 million quid, which is 30% off the bottom line. So for the BBC, these are worrying times.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people, who say Jewish people who are saying they're institutionally anti-Semitic. Why should I give money to pay for my own, basically, enemies? And people who work there who are Jewish, we had a guy on the show. You can't really work there if you're Jewish now because you can't really talk about anything. Is it institutionally anti-Semitic and racist and biased? And you can understand why people don't want it anymore.
Well, when I was at the BBC, and I spent 12 years there, I never came across any behaviour like that. I think the problem for the BBC...
But Jeremy Bowen would have been there, so...
Yeah, but not where I was working.
Oh, right,
I was based.
Yeah, he didn't meet everyone, actually.
What did you do, actually? Where did you present on the BBC?
Well, I presented in Southampton for BBC Radio Sonar, but my programmes were networked. So I would be on a Friday night, I might be on either 6 stations or 14 stations at times. I think the problem for the BBC, guys, is if we look at it, the BBC's £169.50 a year. So that equates to about £3.50 a week, which is how much we would spend on a coffee from Starbucks or Costa. one of those a week would buy you the BBC. So when you think of it like that, it's a bargain. The problem
not compared to Netflix or Amazon Prime, it's not, which is about half that price, isn't it?
Well, I think the thing for the BBC is they would argue you get a lot more from the BBC with radio and iPlayer.
You don't pay for that with a license, do you? It's just the television.
Yeah, you get the racism for free, which is part of the deal. You get the full package. It's like Sky. They go, well, right, okay. So what can you have with Sky? You can have your your TV. You can have your movies. You can have with the BBC. You can have the criminality. You can have the racism, and you can have a few B-list movies and some and some decent, half decent TV. You get it all.
Well, you guys know that whatever we buy, we either want it or we need it. Yeah. So if it's petrol or diesel or electricity, we need it. Yeah. If it's something nice, we want it. And I think the issue for the BBC is people feel they don't need it anymore. And after the publicity the BBC's been getting in the last few years, they feel they don't really want it anymore. And the BBC have tried to keep up with the times, but they are lagging now. And to think that the government may include Netflix in your license fee, this is one of the ideas going around at the moment, sounds crazy to me.
I'm sure that instinctively what they'll do is, as people know, I'm on YouTube as well as doing this. I think instinctively what they will seek to do is put the regulation onto the internet broadcasters by Ofcom. Potentially nothing wrong with that, actually, but I'm against it simply because it's hard to create balance over a network when you're a sole trader. But
the government activists.
But then, of course, the next thing they'll do is they will say, well, anyone watching any programmes at all have to pay the licence fee. But look, can I ask you this question, Alex? Is there not an element of... I honestly think the BBC would be improved if it had to care what its audience thought about it.
Yeah, there's definitely an argument for that. The BBC, I think, is trying to do too much. I mean, they will now run a promo for you saying, we are giving you a chill-out playlist. None of us need good old auntie to do that. I think we want the BBC to deliver news and some sport and some great drama and educate and inform. I think the BBC is trying to do too much.
But they're on the government side, you know. When the Tories were in power, have I got news for you, would always be taking the mick, and you'd think it would now they'd be taking the mick out of Labour, but no, they're still on the Tories, so the BBC's been captured. I mean, you must have seen this over the years. How is it? And it was always a bit left, but it was normally a bit straight with the news and other things. How has it changed over the last 20, 30 years that you've seen?
Well, I think the thing for big business, no matter who you are, and the BBC is probably the most extreme example of it, Channel 4 was pretty extreme too, is they've gone very, very woke and they are very afraid, so no risks are taken and everything's gone Magnolia. And when stuff goes Magnolia, people turn away to watch channels like talkTV because at least there's some opinion there.
Well,
and truth as well.
I do think. I mean, I think Channel 4 is an interesting example. I'll tell you why I think Channel 4 is an interesting example. First of all, it's the other public service broadcaster, right? It doesn't have any shareholders at the moment. That may change. Personally, I don't care whether it's privatised or not. I'm quite happy for it to be in the public sector. But it receives no state subsidy. But also, of course, the embarrassing thing about the BBC and Channel 4, they go, the BBC can only do what we're doing because the unique way we're funded. There's only 2 public service online streaming, and Channel 4 has the more successful one of the 2. Now, partly that's because of It's a Sin, which is one TV show. But it's embarrassing that the BBC sit there saying we couldn't do this without the licence fee, and then somebody's doing it better without the licence fee.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and I feel the time has come for the BBC to say this drama is brought to you by, I don't know, Ford or British Gas or Manchester United or British Airways or what. I think they need to take some sponsorship. They've always said they won't do that because then they're not impartial.
Well, they're not anyway. We know they're not impartial anyway.
Well, I'll tell you the other thing that's interesting, Alex, is if you use a VPN and manage to go onto bbc.com and pretend that you're not in the United Kingdom, you'll see it's got adverts all over it.
Sure.
the BBC has a commercial division, and in fact, they operate quite happily. And in fact, actually, it's a bit of a swizz because all the TV shows like Only Fools and Horses that taxpayers' money paid to pay for, they sell around the world on BBC Worldwide.
Well, Top Gear was their biggest money spinner, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And they messed that up.
Yeah, and I think that's when the rot started to set in for the BBC, with Jimmy Savile, and then the loss of Top Gear, and then it just seems
snowballed. Hugh Edwards, and now there's more and more coming out.
And the more that comes out, the more, understandably, nervous the BBC get. But let me ask you guys, let's say us three are brought in to run the BBC. What do? We know at the moment, until the next BBC charter comes out for sure, we need to get in millions and millions for the licence fee, right?
Get rid of all the committees. Have one person who decides on the dramas, one person decide on the comedy, instead of committing and you end up with Mrs. Brown's Boys.
I'll tell you what I would do. I would immediately make a decision. Are we delivering a service? Are we the set-top box, or are we the channels? And I think ultimately you have to say that probably are the iPlayer or the what's on iPlayer. What you could do with iPlayer, you could immediately allow you to plug in all sorts of services around the world and say it's no longer just the BBC that operates from iPlayer. And you could have iPlayer boxes in people's houses and iPlayer TVs. I think that's a really good move. Look, if you think about our ultimate boss, the reason he sold Sky was because it wasn't able to merge with the Times. And he said, look, ultimately, if I can't be the person that provides the infrastructure, then I have to go on the news side only, which I think is a reasonable point. I think also the global network of news is what I'd focus on as well. Not the commentary, the straight news, the having the bloke in Gaza is helpful. And so I think that's that for me.
Bowen.
I think the problem is they've got a lot of fluff in there that's no good. What was the most successful thing they ran during lockdown? BBC Bite Size, sort of things to teach kids for GCSE.
But it used to be called the BBC. When we had the moon landing in, I think it was 69, there was no audio, so they got Pink Floyd in to play live. I mean, it used to be quite ahead of the curve and arty and have really interesting things, but it's totally gone the other way now. It's very formulaic and very with the establishment.
Yeah, and us guys, we grew up loving, whether it was Two Ronnies, Morecambe and Wise, Top of the Pops.
And it was one bloke that decided that, not a committee.
I went to Top of the Pops once.
Did you? Oh, I was on it. We were at number 2, the Talk Sport people in 2014. Yeah, that's right.
Well,
man.
we've all got very fond memories of the BBC and ITV, of course, because that's all we had when we were kids. But the sands are continually shifting, and now it doesn't matter who you are, you're not going to get those big audiences, because there's 17 million UK households that subscribe to Netflix. You then add Amazon Prime.
Well, YouTube even is now where people get their news from.
YouTube's the greatest TV channel in the world. You can go on there
and it's free.
And watch someone doing a tutorial on fishing, or you can watch an old Johnny Carson show from 1969 that you never thought you were going to see.
Edward Carson. Sorry, I'm joking.
Johnny Carson.
It is the best TV channel ever.
Sorry.
You're right.
Sorry, bit of a joke there. Right, okay. Thank you so much to Alex Dyke, who is a former BBC presenter. This is the press preview with Andre Walker and Asher Gould, and we're going to be back with the Times just in a couple of moments.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is the press preview with Andre Walker and Asher Gould. And what have you got next? You've got the Times.
We've got the Times. Robert De Niro's must-see TV thriller. I mean, he's ruined his legacy when he did that deranged talk about Trump. He'll never leave office. I mean, that'd probably be a good thing if he didn't. He's doing a lot of good. But, I mean, actors like that should just stay out of interviews. It adds the mystique. It's ruined him in many ways. US may provide air cover to protect Ukraine peace. So... that's interesting. He's going to Putin's going to apparently go over to the States. So is he going to be back into the international fold again? That's what
Donald Trump wants him to rejoin the G8, which he was thrown out of following the invasion of Crimea in 2014. Yeah. Look, I mean, I personally, people are going to go mad at me for this, but my view is, render unto Caesar that is Caesar's. I don't think it's rewarding President Putin, Vladimir Putin, if you allow some of the Russian-speaking areas that he's invaded anyway to become part of Russia, should they want to do so. I think actually you create a more viable Ukraine by having what is left of Ukraine, you know, with solid and safe borders, which I think you do with membership of the EU and NATO.
And I don't think he is. You know, people are going, oh, like Hitler, if you appease him. He's not going to. He doesn't want to expand Russia to outside where it used to be.
Well, the other thing is, if he was going to do anything, he would launch an invasion to cut off Latvia, Estonia and Lithuania by running through Belarus and going to Kaliningrad. Yeah. But there's no way he's going to do that.
Well, NATO, because of NATO.
These days.
NHS chief, private funds needed to fix our hospitals. So what they're going to do there? The NHS...
It's what is it? It's at 50% of our GDP on the public sector. The public sector are asking for more.
They want it.
What should it be? 60%, 70%, 80%, 90%?
They want the private sector to lend it money to fix crumbling hospitals. Well, we just need to adopt a new system. It's time to get rid of this sacred cow. Because of short-term general elections, no party will ever do it.
I think it's best. Anyone in politics should let the NHS fall to bits, because if you try and help,
but they've been saying that for 40 years now. I saw a Yes Prime Minister or a Yes Minister even, and it was all about, you know, wards being built and then not even being used and knocked down. I mean, it's been going on for 40, 50 years, and it will just carry on until it collapses, really, which maybe it is. End the war, but don't let Putin win the peace. That's the Daily Express. Volodymyr Zelensky has begged the world not to sell out Ukraine to the Russians. Please don't sell Ukraine out to the Russians. We need more planes. The plane. He said allies should refuse to allow everything to go according to Putin's plan after Donald Trump shocked NATO by revealing, turn to page 4.
Sorry, look at Queen Camilla's.
Selfie Queen's a good sport.
Look at the glove.
No, that's a bunch of... Oh, yeah, she's got a glove.
And she looks like she's wearing a blue plastic glove.
No, I want to see for yourself. Look, is she wearing a blue plastic glove?
Can you do it on that one? Let's see if we can get that. Can we get that, anyone?
No, it's not.
No, we can't get it. We can't get that. Okay. Can you tell what it is yet?
No, that's not Rod Hole.
Oh, that's not Rod Hole. Don't do him. Don't do him.
Oh, no, you can't do that. Quick fix is a dirty deal. Trump accused of World War II style appeasement. Well, I mean, look, basically, you know, you say Chamberlain appeased Hitler. He came back, he said, I've got this piece of paper, and if he crosses this red line, we're going to war. And he declared war. Obama had the red line, and he didn't. So, you know, if Trump is a tough guy and a tough negotiator, and if Putin oversteps the mark, you know, there'll be trouble like Hamas on Saturday afternoon at midday at the OK Corral. Quick fix is a dirty deal. UK and EU leaders condemn President for offering Putin everything he wants. Ukraine must be at heart of peace talks after huge sacrifice to push back invaders. I'm
not convinced, but it's fair to say that most of the front pages are about this deal between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. But let's be clear, no deal has been made yet. I mean, all he said was he thinks it's unlikely that Ukraine will join NATO. He thinks that Ukraine should start paying its own bills. He wants mineral rights under Ukraine in exchange for sending more equipment. And he says that he thinks it's unlikely that Ukraine will get all of its territory back to the pre-2014 border, which isn't even the most recent invasion. That was the invasion that took Sebastopol and Crimea.
in 2014. John Lydon in the Eye. I'll never return to Britain. It's changed. You don't say, but we had him on the show a couple of times. He stayed for the whole 3 hours, and all he does is moan about Britain, but he lives in LA. But yeah, you know, I mean, obviously, when you don't come to this country, you come every few years, you notice big differences. But yeah, he's right. But I bet he does come back.
But it is true that this country has been deliberately and willfully changed. I mean,
no doubt about it. When John Cleese said it 10 years ago, they go, "Oh, you're racist." Now it's being said openly because you can't deny it. 1949 deal to protect Europe from war is history. Trump's message to shocked world leaders. Panic and disbelief in Europe as US president signals major shift. We knew that he was going to do that. Everyone knew he was going to sort it out. He'd been having meetings with Putin, so it's all like they're all clutching their pearls, but they all knew what was going on.
The problem is the idea that we are literally just going to, going to smash the Russians, I think is just crazy. Well, and I don't think we want to. The reason we don't want to is the collapse of the Russian Federation would be a complete disaster. Vladimir Putin, let's remind ourselves, is one of the worst military commanders in the history of Europe. The man's awful.
Well, he was never a military man. He was a KGB. He was useless. He handed it to that nutter, the Wagner guy. Fight to save Snake Pass could create 90,000 more Northerners, which would obviously be a very terrible thing. So what's going on with the Snake Pass? You must know about that.
I don't know what the Snake Pass is.
It's the place from Manchester to Sheffield. You go up the Snake Pass.
Oh, through
when it snows, you can't. Yeah. So what's going on? If you know about the Snake Pass, but apparently. Saving the Snake Pass could create 90,000 more Northerners. I mean, do we need more?
I don't understand what that's all about.
Call in if you know what that means. An act of vandalism is taking place in our universities by Kate Lister in education. Well, we know that. I mean, what Trump's done in the States, he's deporting everyone who's gone against the States. And over here, of course, we're still lagging well.
Well, we
behind.
also the free speech unions failed spectacularly. Not their fault to get through that free speech on campus.
But they've turned it around a bit, haven't they?
Well, they have a little bit, but I think it's going to be repealed.
Well, because they've said the minister who turned it back said you can't do that against a parliamentary decision, against the House of Commons decision. So it's going to court, I think, that, but we'll see what happens. We'll speak to Tom about that. And nurseries in childcare deserts forced to move as Labour school policy backfires. Well, everything's backfired. Look what they did with the education, the private education. Now, if you've got a couple of kids, it's like 60, 70 quid a day to take them to nursery. So
horrendous.
Unbelievable.
Well, before we go, should we go for an early break? Before we go to the Telegraph.
Yeah.
We're back with the Telegraph. This is the press preview.
Across the UK on DAB+. On YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is Talk. This is the press preview with Andre Walker and Asher Gould. And what about this front page of the Oh, OK. I'll tell you what we could do. I was going to talk about... No, let's go to Heather in Gavan. Heather, you're on
to
Talk.
make sense of everything. Heather.
Well, with Putin and Trumpy doing deals with...
Flapjack on the
trying
lung.
to stop
Sorry,
this
Heather, come
war
on.
in Ukraine.
No
is
swearing,
a good
Heather.
idea because Zelensky has lost half of his country anyway during this war. And
So would you declare peace? Would you do a Trump?
Ukraine has gone anyway. So how on earth are they going to rebuild half of Ukraine, which is gone?
Well, it's easier to
completely
build half.
decimated, destroyed, fucked, screwed, whatever you want to put it in a nutshell. Because with Putin and Donald Trump working together to sort this mess out, to stop this insanity war in Ukraine, that is the best solution ever, because I don't give a damn anymore, because we are getting fed up of Ukraine war completely. We are fed up of wasting our money, our weapons on a country which is half gone. It's completely waste. I mean, Europe, they have made a total cock-up completely.
I mean,
Why have you stopped?
Are we expected to respond to this?
Why have you stopped?
I mean, I just think that's just a big pile of stupidity, isn't it?
Well, she agrees with Trump. You agree with Trump, basically, don't you, Heather?
Yeah, I agree with Trump 100%. I am behind him every step of the way with this.
I think, in a way, it wouldn't end, would it? You know, people are going, oh, we could beat... I don't think you're ever going to beat Russia. He's never going to quit, because if you quit as Russian leader, you're dead anyway, and he can just keep throwing men. I mean, he even got a load of North Korean, 10,000 of them, and they were just basically there to suck in the drones, because they knew they weren't battle-ready, because they've never had a battle, North Koreans. They've trained, but never had a battle. And they basically threw them into the field, all open to take out Ukraine drones, so they just were literally cannon fodder. Well, drone fodder.
And with Putin, with this threat on nuclear weapons, that is still ongoing. But he's keeping that on the back burner.
Of course, how could he ever lose? I mean, that's why no nuclear powers have ever been to war against each other, because it's a stalemate.
Yeah, it's a stalemate.
I mean, people keep going, we've got to keep going. It's like Hitler didn't have a nuclear weapon.
He's putting a threat on nuclear... It's like a stalemate. It's to put to stop.
Well, the biggest mistake Ukraine made was to give away their nuclear weapons. North Korea learnt that. You know, you never, as long as you don't give your nuclear weapons away, you're home free. Am I right, or am I right, Heather?
Well, you're partly right.
Oh. Which bit was wrong then?
Well, tell you what, if I was Prime Minister of this country, I wouldn't give Ukraine nothing. I would get Putin and Zelensky and Donald Trump round the table, and we will start talking sense. Because one thing about Donald Trump and me, we are sharpshooters. We shoot from the hip. And we get down to the bare front of it.
Heather for Prime Minister.
Heather, what sense would you talk?
Well, we'll say this. If you do not stop this insanity between you two and start sorting yourself out and start working together as neighbours, you might as well just call it a day. And as for you, Zelensky, if I were Prime Minister, you're not going to get nothing from me. Not help.
Yeah, but aren't you therefore
no money,
simply...
nothing whatsoever?
I mean, I don't know why I'm participating.
Because one thing about it, you've got to have tough diplomacy.
Give it a rest. Give it a rest.
You've got to have tough
The man has invaded a foreign country, flattened it, committed multiple war crimes and genocide. He's wanted by the International Criminal Court, which, by the way, I'd abolish, but nonetheless, he's wanted by it. There's been a cost of $450 billion on this, and we're going to go, congratulations, Putin, have half the country, because congratulations, you flattened it.
Biden and Boris Johnson, they instrumented it. They wanted this to happen.
I think the claim that Boris Johnson invaded Ukraine is about as stupid as everything else you've said.
No, I'm talking sense, because Boris Johnson, he went hell for leather to want to help.
He was trying to pretend he was Churchill, wasn't he? He thinks he's sort of Churchill, didn't he? Whereas Churchill was actually a war hero. And Boris had just written a few articles.
Well, we need to stop this insanity between Russia and Ukraine once and for all, because this is a waste of money, resources.
Should we give them Kiev?
And lives.
Should we give the Russians Kiev?
What?
Well, they tried to take Kiev at the first days of the war. Should we give them Kiev?
I've only just learnt to call it Kyiv.
Well, half of Ukraine's gone anyway.
Well, no. But if we withdrew all the military support, one would assume that Vladimir Putin would march on to Kiev, which is what he intended to do on the first day.
Kyiv.
I'm not calling it by the stupid name.
Well, that would be part of the deal, wouldn't it?
No, I'm not. I'm not getting into this whole. Oh, they call it Mumbai in Mumbai. For God's sake, it's Bombay and it's Paris, right? We're not doing all.
It's Burma,
this.
not Myanmar, and it's Rhodesia.
No, it's not right.
No,
it isn't
we better
actually.
not start.
It
We're going to cause an international incident.
Oh, but Peking's perfectly good as far as I'm concerned.
But then three to sort the bleeding mess out.
Is how much more is there?
What would you do with Peking, Heather? No, don't. Actually, we haven't got time. Thanks, Heather. Thank you very much. Anyway, let's go on to the Daily Telegraph. 2.5% on defence won't touch the side. Sounds like me after that curry the other night. And Trump puts UK on £24 billion VAT tariffs alert. Apparently we're being sucked into this VAT tariffs alert, but it doesn't really matter to us because we don't really make anything anymore, do we? I mean, we've got rid of all the steel,
do you know, I was about to say that. Our big exports to the United States of America was steel, but because of our green energy New Deal, Tata Steel's shutting down anyway, so it doesn't matter.
The thing is, America don't really sell much abroad. If you think about it, no, they don't sell anything abroad. Most of their commerce is done within America, whereas Canada and other countries are threatening 25% of their GDP is from American exports. So they're in the driving seat. America really still is the powerhouse of economies.
But let's just remind ourselves that Donald Trump wants a trade deal with the United Kingdom, so he'll put all these tariffs on, but he wants access to UK markets.
He loves us, man.
And what does he want access to? He wants access to British food shops. And the reality is,
he loves Marks and Spencer.
I think we should say yes to that.
Yeah.
And it will be damaging for our farmers, but as I've always said, we should be subsidising our farmers as a matter of national security. So forget the cost of food.
Ghanaian wins right to stay after staging wedding she wasn't at. Well, I can't really read that, but it says everything itself. There's so many different ways to stay in this country.
But what about the Nigerian last week who claimed she was a terrorist, and then, because she wasn't a terrorist, they wanted to deport her?
Yeah,
because she wasn't.
And she didn't like McNuggets as well. Farmers face even tougher rules on guns. What's all this about? Well, I can't read it because it's not printed out very well. But, well, there was a famous story of Tony Martin who died last week, the farmer who actually shot
Labour have basically decided that the solution to all the problems with terrorism in this country is to make guns and knives harder to get. Yeah, because there aren't many knives already out there. I mean, you can buy a knife on Amazon. Pathetic.
I mean, the thing in Israel was people used to have lots of weapons, and when this raid happened, I was thinking, where have all the weapons gone? That the population, well, apparently they took them off them a few years before because they were worried about them getting in terrorist hands. So I'm sure that will change around now.
Now look at that on the bottom right. A giant gas field could power the UK for a decade. Yeah, but it won't.
I mean, this could be. Are they talking about the Gatwick Gusher in Horse Hill? Because there's apparently enough gas up there that if it was fracked out, we'd be self-sufficient.
There's no way. Of course,
down Sussex, they're not going to do that.
There's no way Ed Miliband will ever allow us to produce UK hydrocarbons ever again.
And of course, what they did in Blackpool when they stopped, they said, no, we're going to ban fracking. They poured concrete down the tube. So the future is scuppered as well, although I'm sure there's a way around that. And Windrush star wanted on 130 grand a year. If you want to be a Windrush czar, get your CVs in now, and you can just say what you want, like Rachel in accounts. Don't, add a bit, embellish it a bit. And Mystery of Reeves' HBOS expenses probe. There was some sort of controversy at her last job at HBOS where they were getting their expenses signed. Each manager was getting another manager to sign their expenses, and they got in trouble with it. And this is now our Chancellor, Rachel in accounts, Rachel Thieves, robber Rachel Reeves. So, hell in a handcart. And
she bought handbags for colleagues on expenses.
Oh, so not a waste of money then, because we all need a handbag. Daily Mirror, TV Julia, be a hero and pick up litter. That's all you need to do to be a hero these days. In the old days, you'd have to storm a machine gun in a tower, but now just pick up litter. Keep Britain tidy.
It's like without being funny, the gay pride marches where you go, oh, congratulations for wearing your underpants in public. I mean, well, you know why?
Great. I mean,
you're so brave.
Used to be a sexual offence, that.
You're not brave.
Disgusting.
You're not brave to wear your Y fronts in public. You're just an exhibitionist.
BGT Simon Cowell, I feared stunt would kill me. And look, his head's funny now, isn't it? It's got a funny shape, but I don't know, some stunt that nearly killed him. And King's trip to charm Trump. Nice to meet you, Donald. Really. The King is to visit... He does a bit... we'll have some birthday cake. The King is to visit the US in a bid to boost ties with Donald Trump amid the global tensions his presidency sparked. Ministers hope next year's planned tour, the biggest yet, will be a charm offensive because he loves he loved the Queen. What do you think he thinks of Charles? I'm not sure he'd be a big fan of Charles.
He thinks he'd be good. I'll tell you what we should do, right? Can I make this point to you again? Every single former head of state who's British has always received a dukedom, right? There's only been one, the Duke of Windsor, but I think we need to make him the Duke of Washington.
Who?
Trump, when he leaves office.
Yeah.
And
he is British citizen, isn't he? His mum was British.
The Earl of New York and Baron Trump as well.
Well, he's already got a Baron Trump, hasn't he?
Doesn't matter.
So,
they'll knight him, won't they?
Yeah.
Sir Donald Trump.
Let's have a look. This is interesting. Fashion chain wrapped. This is just a story. Next, please. Advert ban over complaint. Model is unhealthily thin. And I just think she's a thin woman. I used to have a very thin girlfriend, and people would always comment on her skinniness and think there are some very thin women, and they don't have eating disorders. They're just thin, and there's a lot of jealousy. That is not an anorexic woman. That is just a naturally very thin woman with long limbs, and they're saying, that's a disgrace.
But now basically it's all the tubbers that just want to.
Exactly. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that woman. She's not anorexic or anything like that. She's just a healthy, very thin, skinny woman. Borders unfair to Paddington. That's unfair in your language as well, isn't it? A woke Labour... I saw this. A woke Labour MP has moaned that the government's migrant curbs would have denied citizenship to Paddington Bear. It's make-believe, you buffoon. These people are now in power. Stella Creasy, do you remember her? Compared the Channel small boat arrivals with the children's character from Darkest Peru. They're not charming like Paddington Bear. We'd all have Paddington Bear in our house.
Mind you, to be fair, he did hang round on the heath talking to children, so that's fairly similar.
That's a good point.
Fairly similar.
Weight loss jabs can also reduce alcohol cravings, and they can reduce everything. I've seen the results on certain people. And help zookeepers when animals die. Zookeepers need more support to cope with grief when animals in their care die. So if you see a zookeeper and he looks a bit upset, put your arm around him and go, what is it, one of the lemurs or, a lion? What's happened? Apparently some employees and volunteers in the US felt limited empathy from leadership and are unable to openly share their feelings. So, and this is all wokery and zookeeping.
In that case, let's do a final roundup of the front pages before Mike Graham comes on. For those of you listening in the morning, the Times says the US may provide air cover for Ukraine.
That's air cover.
The Daily Telegraph says that the demand to make 2.5% of GDP our military spending won't touch the sides.
I already said that.
The iPaper says that Donald Trump's idea of bringing world leaders together and indeed dealing with Ukraine is similar to what happened in the 1940s, and he's blowing away what happened at the end of the 1940s. The Metro says that this quick fix by Donald Trump simply will not work. The Express says it's the end of the war, but don't let Putin win the peace. Volodymyr Zelensky complaining about the Ukraine deal, which he says is going to be risky. He wants peace, but he doesn't want that to be at the expense of Vladimir Putin being seen to win.
Saudi shocker, teetotal football. Beer ban at 2034 World Cup. Booze will be banned at the 2034 World Cup in Saudi Arabia. Its ambassadors to the UK. Well, we're not surprised. When they did it in Qatar, they said, don't worry, Budweiser send us millions of beers. And when everyone got there, they said, actually, we were lying. And they said to gay people, don't worry, you can come and stay in each other's room. When they got there, they said, no, don't you do that or you'll get 15 lashes and get stoned. They didn't mean in a good way. Booze will be banned. The showpiece event, well, we're not surprised. I mean, they chop up journalists. So it's not. Anyway, go ahead and make my week. Genuine compliments leave a lasting effect. That jacket's gorgeous with its elbow pads. Never mind making your day. Our genuine heartfelt compliment can improve your whole week. Research shows 68% believe sincere and kind words have the power to turn a bad week into a good one. That's a very shallow people, though. Authentic compliments are more important, according to the 8th. So you've got to mean it. And I really did mean that about, what you've done there. But yeah.
OK, so...
Stay tuned. Mike Graham's coming on. He's put his top on and he's raring to go.
The number to call is 0344 499 1000. This has been the press preview on Talk, and Mike Graham is just in a couple of moments. Yeah. Take it away, Mike.
I think we've got another
OK, for those of you who are still with us on a Thursday night going into Friday morning, we're going to be taking your calls. Once again, the number is 0344 499 1000 at...
Virtual Ash at Andre J.P. Walker.
OK, well, what are the topics we're going to talk about today? Well, are you worried about Rachel Reeves? Are you worried about Donald Trump in Ukraine? Are you worried about, once again, this crazy story on the front page that a Ghanaian who lied about having a wedding is going to be allowed to stay? We can talk about the chicken nugget person. We can also talk about that woman who, when the Home Office discovered she wasn't a terrorist, wanted to deport her. That was to say that had she been a terrorist, she'd have been more likely to say, don't worry, she was able to stay anyway, because if you say anything, it's all perfectly fine.
Have you ever had Albanian chicken nuggets? Give us a ring, 0344 499 1000. We want to know all about it. Back in 2 minutes.
Across the UK, on DAB+, On YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, this is The Late Show with Andre Walker and Asher Gould. Do you know what I reckon we do? Why don't we just go straight to the phones? 03444991000. Not bothered about an introduction. Phil in Worthing, you're on Talk.
Evening, Andre. How are you?
I'm chipper.
Good. You always are. Ash, good evening too.
Evening.
Yeah,
And
got
morning.
a little bit of a history lesson for lovely, lovely Heather, who we all love. Back in the 1853, England, along with the Ottoman Empire and one or two others, landed at Sevastopol in Crimea.
Correct.
And tried to take it back. The Russians, being the Russians, left it 3 years when they were losing, sued for peace and sort of got it eventually. I sort of feel we're going down the same road.
They played a long game, Russia, don't they?
They
played a long game.
Do you want the Allen's fact of the day? Allen's fact of the day. A Victoria Cross is the medal from the cannons that we took off the Russians when we invaded Crimea.
That's right.
And the Sevastopol monument at Portsmouth is to sadly the terrible deaths, 517,000 deaths, which, funnily enough, sadly again, we're up to about that number now.
Okay, well, let me tell you another detail. If you've ever been to Windsor, there is a statue of an Irish guard. That Irish guard used to be Saddam Hussein. They stole the metal, melted him down, and turned him into... Do you know that one they pulled down, the Saddam Hussein in Baghdad?
I remember that.
Yeah.
They yanked it down, didn't they?
I'll tell you what. Tell you something.
Yeah.
I met a guy called Nick Popovich, they called him the Cigar Marine. It wasn't shown in British newspapers, but in all American newspapers, it showed the guy who got the tank and pulled that statue down. And he grabs a cigar at the end of it. Can I tell you something?
And they said, I love it when a plan comes together.
I met him. He'd been to Fallujah and he was quite badly disabled. He only had one eye, he only had 10% hearing in one ear, like he couldn't walk properly or whatever. But he told me that what had happened to him in Fallujah was he'd become the only man in history to survive, get this, an RPG in the face. Basically, they said it was a glancing blow, but he said, technically speaking, I've received an RPG in the face and survived. For those who don't know, that's a rocket-propelled grenade, right?
But the lesson is, Andre, is war is bloody awful. No one ever wins, and at the end of it, people always sue for peace.
Well,
I suppose Trump's doing the right thing.
Well, Phil, I will say one thing. I was one of the people that went over to Ukraine in the early days of the war to attempt to stop what was going on. And whatever people say, and I appreciate Heather in Gavan has the beliefs that she has, the reality is Vladimir Putin, who was right in terms of racist abuse of the Russian minority in the eastern side of Ukraine. He was right about that. He was attempting to invade Kiev. The suggestion that he was only attempting to take Luhansk and Donetsk, he was going to take Kiev and then he was going to link up with Transnistria and they were going to go through Odessa into Transnistria. I think there would have been some of Ukraine left. Very, very little.
But Putin's had a bloody nose. You can believe that. He wasn't expecting this. They've really been decimated.
What they'd have done is they'd have annexed all of eastern Ukraine into Russia proper. They'd have taken Odessa as a seaport. They'd have invaded Moldova and taken Transnistria and then linked up with Belarus, completely encircled Ukraine and put a puppet government in there. Now at the end of the day, when I went over there, I didn't go over there to support Ukraine. I went over there to stop a genocide, and we did do that.
Do you remember the Orange Revolution, how they poisoned that president? Do you remember when they poisoned the president about 30 years ago in Ukraine, the Orange Revolution? His face all blew up. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it's terrible. Well, what's happened in your country, your original country, Ash, I know you're Brummy, but, over in Israel was absolutely awful.
Ash's original country. Ash's family.
Maybe, thousands of years ago when we come out the desert,
Ash's family arrived in the United Kingdom when?
Well, it was around Oliver Cromwell's time.
At the time of Cromwell.
1670s.
I'm going to finish with a song, Andre. I'm going to finish with a song. War. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. See you later, boys.
That was, I knew him. I knew that guy. Alvin Stardust. No. Edwin Starr, yeah, I actually knew Edwin. He lived in Telford, and I used to go to his gigs, and he'd come on the show.
What about that in the 1919?
War is stupid. Well. Sorry.
He had a football team in Sandwell called Continental Star, named after him.
Did you know? I bet Asher Gould knew this. Spandau Ballet is a reference to executions of Nazi war criminals.
I told it you the other day. Because it's when they hang them, they used to kick their legs and they'd call it the Spandau Ballet when they were kicking their
prison?
legs. Yeah,
you did tell me.
I think Rudolf Hess was there, lads.
That's right. He hanged himself. Rudolf Hess hanged himself with a hairdryer. Do you remember? But when he was about 90, in the 80s, I remember
By the way, I was about to sing the song "Gold" by Spandau Ballet with new lyrics, but that is not acceptable. That would be taken off.
Well, Tony Hadley got pissed off with the Bold advert, didn't he? Bold.
Have a nice evening, lads. Thanks for your time.
Spandau Ballet. Thanks so much, Phil. All right, let's go to Steve. By the way, we've got 4 slots available. 0344 499 1000. Steve in Walsall. Go for it.
Hello, Andre.
All right.
Hello, Ash.
All right, man.
I just obviously.
Why am I small?
About Reeve doing what she's done. I would suggest she's banged to rights sleeving. I'd also suggest she's banged to rights telling lies about her CV. And they interviewed a short interview with Starmer, and he just had that stupid smirk on his face and said, "Oh, she'll get through this."
Because if she goes, he'd have to go, like Liz Truss with Kwasi Kwarteng.
But I think he doesn't care. And I think what David Starkey said earlier was right. The reality is they've had to pretend that they've got an economic plan, which they haven't got. They've just got spend, and hope for the best. And actually, it's not just she lied about her CV. She lied about expenses. She lied about her CV. Yes. She lied about her book being plagiarised.
About putting national insurance up, taxes.
Her economic policy has been a lie. All of it has been completely fictitious. Well, not completely.
So is Starmer, so he can't really have a go at her.
Been arrested for what she's done.
Well, so should Starmer. Yeah. He lied from the very start.
There are some people.
Liars.
I hope there was some. Steve, there are some people. I don't know if you're included, Asher, but there's people who've been on this show before today who've said that if you say something in your manifesto before an election that you knew you were not going to do, that should be a criminal offence.
Yes, I agree. Of course it is.
That's why Reform said a contract, didn't they? They said it's not a manifesto, we're doing a contract. I mean, it didn't really have any basis in law, but there should be a basis in law, shouldn't there?
There should. I mean, I would also say, I'm saying I suggest, because I'm not saying it, I'm suggesting it to keep myself within the law. I would suggest that this Labour Party are rotten to the core. And it's been proved time and time out again.
Yeah, but the Conservatives were completely hopeless for 14 years.
And also rotten to the core as well, when you look at what happened with COVID and everything.
I should have said that. Yes, I agree.
But these lot seem to have taken it to another level.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Look, what should the country do next then, Steve?
Well, they've got to get somebody in. If there is anybody, Rachel Reeve can't do that. What qualification has she got to do that job?
Halifax Help Desk.
She's got a master's degree in some stupid thing, and
she probably hasn't even got that.
Degrees and everything.
She was a chess champion. If you count a champion of coming 29th, she was a chess champion. I used to come 29th in my class. Does that mean I could say I come top of the class if we take our... Now I come first, always.
You know, I'm a man of experience with everything over the years, as you're well aware. And I can see it as I see it, and I can see all the mistakes they're making. None of them, these politicians, learn by the mistakes. If they want to learn anything, look at the downfall of the Roman Empire, and that'll teach them a lesson.
If you point out any mistakes, you get arrested, called far right. They just clamp down on anyone who says anything.
No, it's in a right mess. I mean, when you've got the leader, he's just sitting there with a smile on his face, a nasty smirk, saying, "Oh, it's all right. She'll get through it."
Let me be clear.
Do you know, it's really funny. Someone's got in touch saying, "Hello, I really like talk, but we want to know from Andre and Ash who on the team you would least like to debate." David Starkey, obviously.
Yeah,
right. How is that?
I mean, he said I was dim tonight.
Yeah, he did actually.
I mean, he's right. I mean, and to him, I suppose I am. But I've taught him a few things in the breaks.
I will say this about you two. You're very intellectual and very clever people.
Thank you very much.
Tell David Starsky.
It's a pleasure when I can get on the show and start talking.
You're always welcome, Steve.
Steve, thank you very much. OK, Robert is in Hertfordshire. Robert, you're on talk.
Hi guys, it's been a long week waiting for your show, I must admit, to be honest with you.
Welcome back.
Now, by the way, are you watching, Robert, or listening?
No, I'm listening because I stepped out of the room.
Because Robert, what I was going to say to you is, I want you to see the iron, for those watching, the iron-on patch on my jacket.
I mean, it's good, but shouldn't you got a brown leather one in contrast?
No, you can't even see that, can you?
I know, but shouldn't you? You know, your elbow.
I did the other side as well, but I put it in a different place.
Isn't it a status symbol, an elbow? Because it improves the suit, so you want it to be shown, don't you?
So there we go.
Sorry, Bob. What do you want to talk about?
I never thought you was an iron, but to be honest with you, that leads me. I had. This is what I phoned up for. I had a post on Facebook taken off.
Really?
And a severe warning. I want to run the post that I put on by you and see what you think. Okay. There was a photograph of Marianne Faithfull and the actor Denholm Elliott. Now this was back in the day. Yeah. Great actor. It was back in the day, and she had a blazer with her bangers hanging right out, right? Very nice. So I happened to say, put on the post, I shouldn't think he was that much interested. It was spent as a butcher's hook. Well, that was offensive. I got it taken off and a warning.
That's not that bad. Can I tell you what I got mine taken off for? There was a picture of Greta Thunberg setting off on a transatlantic voyage, and I suggested that Britain deploy Trident when she's halfway down, right? And I won't say it explicitly what I suggested they did, but what I said was, in the middle of the Atlantic, it would be hard to find the wreckage. But anyway, people were not.
I was going to ask you, both of you, what is the most you consider the most tasteless remark you've ever made on air?
Well, I can't really say. I mean, probably got in trouble. They've all been dumped, haven't they? If we said it again, we'd get in trouble. It's even worse now. I mean, you can't say loads of things on air. There's a whole list of words you can't say.
I'll tell you. I will say one thing though. Part of the reason why we like doing late night stuff is because you can have a bit more of a laugh. Yeah. So there's a couple of reasons. It's not just because you can say things that you can't say during the day. But actually, during the day, the pace tends to run a bit quicker, whereas at night we can kind of explore things a bit more.
And it's a more adult audience.
But I will tell you, what you are watching and listening to now is 14 seconds ago. And there's a button that's here, it's called the dump button, which means we can revert to 7 seconds ago. So if you were to blurt something out that's really offensive, we can get rid of it.
It's 7 seconds away.
But that's
7 seconds away.
But there's a million voices. But let me tell you, the dump button has been used more on me than any of the callers.
I thought it meant something else when I first worked here, dump.
Well, James Wales got his own dump button, hasn't he? Just that's it, isn't it?
Well, we used to have that horn that we got out of the X Factor game. By the way, he'll be back. James Wales will be back tomorrow from 10, and his Twitter's back on. So follow him on Twitter because he wants 100,000 followers. So follow him on Twitter, and he'll be back. Tune in tomorrow from 10.
I made a tasteless remark at a dinner party once. My wife, she used to work for a really posh law firm, and we was in a pub at a dinner party, and I still think it's funny. Right, it was the week that Jimmy Savile, we all came on top of Jimmy Savile.
Probably not going to be funny.
That was the week. So I just happened to say, and I still think it's funny, I just happened to say, I hate that Jimmy Savile, it gives paedophiles a bad name. Well, my wife kicked me under the table. It was like a tumbleweed. Nobody laughed, but I still think it's
I'll tell you the joke. I'll tell you the joke that I think now, having watched me, some of you will get, but I wasn't allowed to tell originally, and now I no longer care. And it's not even a joke. It's a story of, and to understand this, my mum's a Northern Irish Catholic and my dad is from Athens, Greece. So just understand those two details, right? And it's the joke that everyone in Northern Ireland will get, and it's genuinely true, but other people might not necessarily get. So anyway, My dad was drinking with my mum and indeed these Irish people in the hotel bar, and my mum decided she'd go to bed early, and my dad said, I'm going to stay up for a couple more drinks. He came back at about 1 a.m, and he said to my mum, he went, Loretta, it's amazing. Because he grew up in Lancaster, so he doesn't have a Greek accent or anything. He said, it's amazing. Not only did those Irish people guess what country I was from, they guessed what city I was from as well. They guessed I was from Athens. And my mum went, what exactly did the Irish people say? They said, you and your wife seem very nice, but I can tell you're Athenian. And my dad said, that is not what these people have said to you. They did not say you were Athenian. And he said, well, what did they say? And Mum said, what they did was said something very racist about me, and you didn't realise. And he said, why would Athenian be racist towards you? And
by the way, apologies for anyone that was offended by those horrendously offensive comments that were made as an example of what is offensive. So
anyway, they were talking about Greek people. So never mind.
What do you think? If you think there's anything in comedy that shouldn't be,
I don't personally.
That joke you just made.
I'll tell you what I don't like. I don't like necessarily some of the nastiness that's deliberately nasty. But I mean, if you look at, say, the Ricky Gervais bit about Nietzsche and the Holocaust, right? You're not belittling the Holocaust. No. You're making a joke about the stupidity of the way the Nazis bastardized Nietzsche, right? So that's the joke. I think. I personally, the problem is offence is taken rather than given, they always say. I think but the reason we do what we do here is because obviously it's a broadcast. So because it's the public airwaves, what we might say as a joke at a party might be different to what you could say on the airwaves. Not because in real life we're racist, but because
we are, but
says the Jewish guy.
With Chris Morris was offensive then, the way he done on paedophiles.
Oh, I remember that. We were doing a show about that, but that's been sort of, now they've said, we understand what it was about, you know what I mean? Because they sort of got the wrong end of the stick, didn't they?
Yeah, certainly did.
He was pointing out the stupidity of what the media was going mad about, you know what I mean? That was what the zeitgeist was at the time, and rightfully so.
And it's strange that we find that offensive, but what's going on, we pick the papers up every day, and it's going on with the Muslim grooming gangs.
I'll tell you what I found funny when somebody said, do you know that there was that guy saying that convicted terrorist who wanted the name the Saracen's Head removed as a pub, and somebody suggested they change it into the Ginger Jihadi instead, which I thought was quite a good one. All right, Robert, we're going to leave it there and go to the break. After the break, we're going to be talking to Lowry, who is in Merseyside. Back in a mo.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, indeed, this is Talk. Let's go to Lowry in Merseyside.
By the way, happy Valentine's Day, everybody. You know, are you expecting a bulging sack in the morning? Mine normally isn't that much, but we'll see what happens in tomorrow. Are you expecting anything? Are you doing anything for Valentine's Day? It's a commercial opportunity. Just ignore it. Go out on another day, because you just get loads of other couples.
Well, I will tell you what I was hoping. I was hoping James Whale would be off sick tomorrow night, so I could not spend money at a Michelin-starred restaurant. Right? Yeah. How my life has changed.
Yeah. Are you going to be on Instagram? Oh, it will be. Yeah.
Come and spend your money on me, Andre.
Well, let me tell you, I looked at this place and I could either go out to dinner tomorrow or personally fund Britain's independent nuclear deterrent. Right? It's just dreadful. It's dreadful.
If you got back up to the north of England, you could have taken me to Moor Hall, the local restaurant for Valentine's night.
Which one is it?
It's called Moor Hall, and it's just got its third Michelin star.
In Liverpool?
It's in Orton.
Isn't it full of? Have you checked? It's not full of migrants now.
Right? Can I tell you a great story about Liverpool? When I joined the Foreign Press Association when I worked for Breitbart, they said, right, we need an American journalist to go on a visit somewhere, right? And I signed up for it, and I said, look, just to be clear, whilst I'm the UK correspondent for Breitbart, and it's an American publication, I'm not American. They said, no problem. They signed me up. I got to the briefing and they said, it's a trip to Liverpool, right? Now, just to be clear, I'm not from Liverpool, but I'm from near Haydock, and Haydock is in Liverpool, right? So I'm from but I also went to school in Liverpool. My brother was a chorister at the cathedral in Liverpool, right? My brother is one of the stadium announcers at Anfield.
Well,
and I went on.
Anfield.
Oh, I think you need to turn your TV or radio off. But anyway, literally, I had to go round Liverpool pretending to be surprised by all these sights. But we stayed at the Hope Street Hotel, which is excellent.
It's very nice.
What's happened to the Adelphi? That used to be a great hotel.
Oh,
now.
it was right
What's going on now with it? It's been years.
It has been.
I know, but it went off in the 80s. It was the place to go.
I remember in the 90s going in there, and it was meant to be posh. It was absolute filth.
Is it now a Britannia hotel, is it?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
So it is Britannia Hotel.
And he's done a deal. All those hotels are mainly full of boat people.
I know. And all the boat people should be put straight back on an RAF transport plane as they land.
Because they've broken in illegally, and there was that law that they brought in, but of course this lot reversed that law.
But the reality is, if you look at that Gazan ruling, where a Gazan family could come in under the Ukraine resettlement scheme because of equality, the judge said, as David Starkey quoted earlier, the rights of Gazans are more significant than the public interest of the United Kingdom. You are a second-class citizen.
Starkey should be put on a plane and sent away.
Why don't you like Dave Starkey?
David Starkey is a boring.
I find him fascinating.
I do as well.
You must be extremely well educated.
Why? You find him boring?
He is.
Yes. My ex-husband used to sit listening to him in bed. And it was a good way of spoiling
well, it's not. Yeah, but that's more
because he used to ruin your.
That's more to do with you not getting any nookie because of David Starkey. He's going shush, shush.
The Dave Starkey was stopping you getting you.
With like the hand thing. Have you seen the claws?
Yeah.
The Starkey claw.
Which school were you at, Andre?
St Edward's College, West Derby.
That's arthritis.
Oh, Eddie's.
Yep.
On Queen's Drive.
On Queen's Drive, mate. You prick.
And I was at St Edmund's. St Edmund's College.
Okay.
Prince's Park. And now you're saying you come from Haydock. It's just down the road.
No, I didn't say I come from Haydock. And it's important to understand that, because what will happen is people will write in and go, but Haydock's in Merseyside, mate. No, I'm from near Haydock, but the bit that's in Manchester.
Which is that?
Lowton. Do you know where
do you know where Luton
Yeah, do you know where the
is?
Texaco petrol station is on the East Lancs? Right, you just turn left. Just turn left there. It's where the old coal board building was.
I've got a trivia question. Which football ground is closest to the River Mersey?
Ooh.
It's now Everton.
No, it's Manchester City. It might have been when they were at Rusholme, actually, but I'm not sure now. But yeah, good trivia question.
That is a great
Well,
trivia.
if you come down the A570 to Rainford.
But Rainford's
We can have a
depressing,
drink
though, isn't it?
I've no cause to do that. Why would I do that?
I always loved that year. I'd always loved at the Grand National when people all the posh people come to Liverpool, and then you see them all, with the tags on, mate, because they're out on day release, mate.
Really is done.
Superb.
Oh, charming.
All right, Larry, thank you so much. Very interested in all these details about going around Liverpool. But there's a 3 Michelin-starred restaurant in Ormskirk. I believe that's wrong. Anyway, I think we should go to a break, and then we'll come back with Michelle in London.
Hooray.
Back.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, this is Talk, and let's go straight to Michelle in London. Michelle, you're on Talk.
Good morning, boys. Happy Valentine's.
Thanks, Shell.
You are at sight for sore eyes. I'm old. Listen, that David was fantastic tonight. I think you should have it. Oh, was it Dr. Dave? Do you know, I thought he was a sir.
He should be, but, the establishment...
No, so basically he's got the one down. He's a commander of the Order of the British Empire. So just to remind you, as regular James Whale listeners, there are 3 levels of the Order: member, MBE, officer, OBE, or commander, CBE.
And they're slightly better medals. You see the CBE, it's got a lovely bit of enamel on. The OBE's gold and the MBE silver. It's a bit like I want the CBE because it's got that lovely...
I could listen to him all night, and I think you two was really involved in it, and I love it. Anyway, it's just 3 quick things I just want to ask you. First of all, Andre, you've worked in the House of Parliament, so you're aware of all this... net zero and everything. Now, all these people are preaching to the British public, everybody, about all these, we should have this energy and don't do this and don't do that. Why don't they display their homes and show us what they've got. Have they got all these boilers in their house?
We pay for all their heating on their first and second homes.
Yeah,
so
they can claim the heating on expenses.
Thousands of pounds a year, while the old people, are freezing to death in their houses.
But have they got all these boilers?
Well, it wouldn't matter because they can claim the heating on expenses.
They can leave
anyway.
their windows open and just leave the heating on constantly. We pay for it.
Right,
I mean, it'd be interesting to know what the heating bills were for every MP.
Oh, it does come out. I mean, I've seen about £3,000 for each house normally.
Yeah.
But Andre, because I thought you was in there, I thought you was in and out of the houses, so you could give us like.
Oh, I've got in their actual houses.
It doesn't go to their actual houses.
Oh, you're a bit slow. You've got to get in there, Andre, and report back to us. Right. Second thing.
How could I do that? I mean, I'm up
befriend
for it.
them. Befriend
I'm
them.
up for it. But of course,
He's very good at networking.
Which home would Keir Starmer be going to? His own home or the home of Lord Ali?
Lord Ali.
It's just a question nobody knows the answer.
Imagine the heating system in his £18 million penthouse. It'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Next one. Next point.
In London, you can't get a garden for that.
No.
Well, anyway, now I'm a bit disturbed today listening about this fella coming over to preach. Now, I can't remember full. Maybe you two can help me. I don't know if it was like 6 years ago or 7 years ago. There was a bloke from, I think he was Danish, who wanted to come over.
Geert Wilders.
That's it. I knew
the one who looks like a Furby.
Yes. Oh, he's cute. But anyway, he wanted to come over and nobody would let him over.
Correct.
But now they want to let this monster over.
I don't think he'll get in because of what he said.
Do you think so? Are you sure?
Well, I'm not sure, but I would have thought so. I mean, he said if you don't, it's worse to not go to one of your daily prayers. It's worse than being a paedophile or a rapist to miss your mosque attendance. So, I mean, we don't need people like that preaching their hate because it does incite, young kids to go and do stupid things like Oh, your elbow patch has fallen off. By the way, I've got a Twitter in, someone saying my hands are white. It's because when I was sunbathing at the weekend, I always wear gloves like Michael Jackson. That's why I got white hands.
Right.
White hands, brown face.
It's not. It's because he goes into makeup and goes, "Have you met Ian Dale?" Right, that's what.
No, but I mean, it's an homage to Trump, isn't it?
They creosote his face.
Yeah.
And also, do you think that this is just? I mean, I don't really get into politics and religion because I've got my own views. But now, I agree with us giving money to Ukraine because they're supporting our borders. But what I don't understand is why the EU is not shutting down their borders because we're getting the inflow. And it's
Michelle, it's gone the other way. We've now joined the EU refugee resettlement scheme. So we're going to take on the people that come over on the boats, people who come over on the vans, less of them now, admittedly. But we're also going to take people from the EU as well in exchange for help from the EU dealing with our migrant gangs. Yeah, that'll never happen.
And also, by the way, Germany's funding Russia's war by buying gas and oil off them at the same time as them killing all the people in Ukraine. It's a ridiculous, crazy world we're living in. It's really a sort of fake war, isn't it?
But when I was growing up,
it's a real war.
My dad fought in the war, and he always said to me, I fought for your freedom of speech and democracy, and we're an island and we will always be safe because we are self-sufficient. Now, where did we go wrong here?
Where we went wrong is very simply what David Starkey was talking about. When you exchanged democracy for the rule of lawyers and you brought in all this human rights and this idea that the lawyers have, which is that everyone in the world has a right to come to the United Kingdom and it's for the British to accept that. And because democracy has been subverted by the rule of the court and the rule of the lawyer, we can't stop them. And that's why you end up in the stupid situation with Chicken Nugget Man.
And we've thrown away our nuclear power stations. So we're not even self-sufficient.
All right, Michelle, thank you so much. That's Michelle in London. Ken in London, you're on Talk.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Oh, by the way, I wanted to congratulate you. I don't know if you were at the protest outside the High Court.
Oh, I heard him.
That wonderful lady who has been told that she shouldn't have been sacked by her school for objecting to LGBTQ teaching of primary school children. Were you there?
No, I wasn't there today, no.
I heard you in Westminster a couple of days ago. You were at some big, there was sort of almost a riot. I could hear you in the background preaching. What was that?
That was the farmers.
That's right. You were preaching to the farmers. It was we got Ken in the middle of all these tractors preaching the gospel.
Did you not know about this, Christy Higgs?
I never knew about it.
Christy Higgs from Gloucestershire worked at a secondary school. She posted some comments on Facebook defending a Christian's right to not have their children taught LGBTQ stuff in primary school, and was sacked and has spent 7 years fighting the case. And she had a major victory in the High Court. Major
Wonderful.
Victory.
Well, listen, and my daughter and son are teachers in Canada. They have to be extremely careful. In Alberta, where my daughter lived, the teachers can be fired because they don't promote LGBT.
It's worse than here in Canada, isn't it? Apparently, in many ways, it's worse in Canada than here.
Oh, Canada's turned into a very godless country, Ash. No. The Prime Minister, he's getting bombed out.
Is it just Trudeau, or is it more than that?
Oh, it's more than that. Trudeau's only one small cog in that there, but it's the whole country. And in Canada, I used to get stopped from preaching when I went to preaching in the cities in Canada. The best city for preaching the gospel for me and my friends is London. The police here give us free speech. We don't focus on any particular sins or any particular people. We just focus on everybody. We're all sinners. And we all need to repent if we believe in Jesus and ask forgiveness. That's what we need to preach. Some preachers get in trouble because they start preaching against homosexuals. We're not to preach. We just preach we're all guilty sinners. We must repent and go to hell.
But what about those people like Gloucester, like the woman in Gloucester, who have a specific concern because she is somebody who works in a school, and therefore I would argue she has a specific right, I would argue a duty, to make her point felt.
Well, I totally agree with her. That's a different issue, Andre. I'm just talking about preachers, street preachers, but that's a different issue. See, what they're ramming this rubbish and immorality down the children's throats. They're polluting the minds of young children with filth. What
happens, Ken? A child at primary school who has been educated so badly, they are corrupted by all of this and are unable to repent as a result. What happens to them? Because they are a victim, aren't they?
No, but God convicts us all of our sins, Andre. God is a respecter of no persons. The ministry of the Holy Spirit is to convict the world of sin, of righteousness and judgment. God speaks in everybody's conscience. He speaks to everyone in love and warns us about the need to repent and turn to his Son, Jesus. This is the good news. Christ died for the sin of the world. We're all guilty, but if we will humble ourselves, ask God to forgive us and turn away from sin to follow Jesus and be born again, we get to heaven.
Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do, Ken. Let's keep Ken on the line. We'll go to a break and we'll be back in a moment.
With a sinner.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Yes, okay. We're not going to read out some of the jokes that have been sent in. People have been attempting to amuse us with some off-colour jokes that we can't read. I just want to say to Wayne, yeah, all right, got it. Okay, Ken in London. Ken, what were you calling about? Because we did derail you ever so slightly.
Thanks, Andre. Listen, I want to talk about Russia. The world, since the last Great War, Russia has been causing much fear and concern throughout the world, especially the old Soviet Union. And it seems to be, to me anyway, that Putin is clearly a power-hungry maniac. He seems to be obsessed with making Russia the world's dominant power. Now,
You've only just realised that?
No, I realised that a long time ago, Naz, but now it's been openly seen. But I can tell you, and all your listeners and viewers, I can tell you exactly what Russia will do in the possible near future.
Go on then.
It can be found in the Bible. Russia is going to unite in an alliance with Muslim nations to attack Israel. They're going to unite with Iran, Sudan, Libya, Turkey, the Magog nations, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, they're all going to unite together and they're going to flood and attack Israel.
But they already tried that, didn't they? I mean, October the 7th was actually Putin's birthday, wasn't it? They say there was a link between. I don't know if that's true.
Naz, that was nothing to what's coming here. But the good news is, and the warning to all these nations and to Putin, if he's the leader of Russia, God, the God of Israel, Yahweh, God the Father, he will fight on the behalf of Israel and he will destroy all these nations by natural means.
But Ken, can I ask you this question? Because this is a bit that I don't understand. And as you know, I always give you plenty of time to talk because I respect what you're saying. But you believe that God is going to intervene. Well, sorry, you don't believe. You are quoting the Bible that God is going to intervene on the side of Israel. But you believe that the people that live there are going to hell because they don't believe in Jesus. How do you square that contradiction?
Well, you see, God has chosen out a nation from which the Messiah would come, from the tribe of Judah and of the lineage of King David. God judges the Jew and the Gentile. The Jew and the Gentile have all got the opportunity to repent. But it seems to be that God has held back the Jews and given the Gentiles a time to repent and be saved. But God is going to renew and restore his covenant with Israel. See, God has got a foreign policy, and it's in Genesis chapter 17. God says to Abraham, he says, I will bless them that bless thee, that's Israel, and I will curse them that curse thee. That's God's foreign policy. All the nations who bless Israel, God has promised to bless those nations. All the nations who curse Israel, God has promised to curse them.
Mind you, to be fair, I will say one thing, Ken, actually thinking out the argument. If God descends from heaven on the Temple Mount to defend Israel and goes, by the way, Jesus was actually my son, I suspect that most of the Jews will go along with that one.
Yeah, I mean, if he actually does that, you know what I mean?
Only one third of the Jews will repent. 2/3 will continue to rebel. That's in Zechariah chapter 12, 13 and 14. The tremendous things are coming, gentlemen, all you listeners. I'm not talking about religion. We're talking here about history in advance. Bible prophecy is the most amazing book in the world.
How do you know that you're right on this occasion? So what I mean,
it's all been right so far.
What I mean by that is it's clearly in the Bible that there will be awful, nations and evil, and there'll be the Antichrist who'll rise up and all this. But how do you know it's happening now?
Very good question. Very good question, Andre. The answer is when we check back the history of Bible prophecy, we can check it all out. We can find out that God fulfilled exactly word for word what he prophesied. And because all those prophecies have been filled according to the word of God, we can understand that all the future prophecies will be fulfilled in like manner. Jesus fulfilled over 300. Can you believe that? The odds in a man fulfilling 5 prophecies in the millions. Jesus fulfilled over 300 to prove he is the Messiah of Israel. He died for the sin of the world. He rose from the dead. He's coming back as prophesied, but this time he comes back as the judge. He comes back to judge the world and establish the kingdom of God on earth. And time is running out, everybody. God loves us. The question is, do you love God? Are you willing to repent of your sins and turn to Jesus? That's your decision. And that will determine your eternal destiny.
Are you willing to do that, Asher?
I'm thinking about it. You know, if he does descend and that and all that, and it does come to pass.
To be fair, if he does descend from heaven and destroy Iran and destroy Hezbollah and destroy Hamas and destroy Vladimir Putin and destroy Kim Jong-un and then says, my son is Jesus, I think, and I'm not saying this to be churlish or offensive, I think you'd have to give him credit.
Yeah, but do you remember David Icke? David Icke did the same thing on Terry Wogan's show, and you know he just got mocked.
Andre and Ash, Jesus is coming back. The Bible says he shall come, and every eye shall see him, and those who pierced him. He is coming back.
How do you know when it's him and not Satan?
Ash, Jesus is coming back in his power and glory.
But
he
who's
came
God?
The first time as a humble carpenter to die for the sins. He comes back in the revelation of God in his fullness. This is going to be amazing.
It's going to be a big...
Waking up, London. Waking up, UK.
How can God have a son? I mean, he's not a human, is he?
He is God-man. He is all God, all man. He's in heaven right now. You
can't be one. You've got to be one or t'other.
No, with God, nothing is impossible, Naz. That your God, the Jew, I believe in the God of Israel. He's my God. I believe in the Messiah of Israel. God. He's my Messiah. I believe in the Bible. It's the Jewish Bible. I believe in the Bible. It's for the Jew and for the Gentile, but it was all written by Jews under the inspiration of God.
How dare you? No, all right, yeah.
Under the inspiration of God. Ash, you need to waken up, Ash.
Well, it's
you need to waken
10
up.
10 to 1. I've got to go. I am awake. I mean, I've got, it's
waking up spiritually. Spiritually, you're awake physically, but you're asleep.
How do I do that?
Can I ask you this? Another question. Do you? I know this sounds silly, but do you worry about Ash? Because obviously, you wouldn't phone this show if you disliked us.
He says I'm the Antichrist.
No,
a Jesus mocker.
I said you're a Jesus mocker, and you are.
Well,
sadly, but I love Ash. I'm not against you, Hungry. I don't hate anybody. I don't hate anybody. God gave me love in my heart.
Good.
I used to be a vindictive type of person before I was a Christian, very aggressive. And now I just say to people who oppose me, God bless you, pal.
But there must be elements of you. There must be elements of you that are still vindictive and try and hold that back.
It comes out sometimes.
No, I'm not vindictive, and I can say that honestly. I commit sin as a Christian, but I'm not. I don't hold anybody.
I mean, some of your natural instinct is going to come out in all circumstances, isn't it?
Yes. When that happens, I say, God, forgive me for that.
It's that simple, is it? You just do what you want and you go, God forgive me. Yeah, I mean,
no. Actually, these things happen. As a Christian sin as well, but our sins are covered by the blood.
Mother Teresa, never happened to her.
Our sins are covered by the blood of Jesus. He paid for my sins. I believe in him. But those who don't believe in him, they will pay for their own sins in hell. Jesus was
that's not very
nice, is it? Ash. Jesus was punished by the Father in our place. He took our punishment that we could go free. If you don't believe in the Messiah, you pay the price of your own sins in hell.
Is it not? And once again, and I'm not taking the mick.
Sounds like that Andrew Tate.
Is there not a moral problem with what Christopher Hitchens talked about, which is this idea that a innocent man was brutally murdered in Jerusalem, in Israel, for sins by people who had not yet been born. Why was it the duty of Jesus to die for your sins?
That is a bit harsh.
Because God wants a relationship with us. We're all sinners, but He wants a relationship. We cannot have a relationship with God until. Isn't
it immoral? Isn't it immoral to put your child to death on the basis that somebody in the future should have their sins taken by him on their behalf?
Ash, this is a revelation of the love.
No, I understand. I understand. I'm just exploring a point that Christopher Hitchens made when he said, well, actually, I didn't want Jesus to die for my sins. In fact, I didn't want him to die at all.
Well, that's his opinion. He's entitled to that. But when I look at the scriptures, I see the love of God for me. When I see Jesus Christ crucified on the cross for my sins, this is personal. I had communion today with a friend who's not keeping well. We had communion together. And we remember the death of Christ until he comes. And we repented of our sins, and we enter a relationship with God is continuous. This is a wonderful thing to be forgiven. It's wonderful to be born again by the Spirit of God.
All right, Ken, I don't want to cut you off, but we have got Tony now. Thanks so much for answering all my questions. Tony is in Lancashire. Tony, you're on talk.
Good evening. Yeah, I was just listening to that conversation.
You what?
You might have a point there, to be honest.
What?
But the thing is, though, I'm getting confused with some of Rachel Reeves, right? She's on about in an interview over there, right? She wants to put more money into people's pockets, if you know what I mean.
What?
But the thing is, though...
What's all that about? What are you talking about, Willis?
Right, Rachel Reeves.
Can you get me...
Oh, yeah. Robert Reeve.
Let's talk about Rachel Reeves, sorry. Anyway, thank you for taking my phone call, anyway.
Wait, Tony, no, don't go.
Tony, it's
we haven't finished.
Tony, the only reason we bent down is to get this equipment because we couldn't understand what you were saying, Tony.
Start again from the beginning. Start again.
Take
it's
a
all
breath,
a big
Tony.
kerfuffle. Now begin again. Now let's go again. Away you go.
Right, Rachel Reeves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rachel from accountants, Scalafe.
Yeah.
I said that before I get banned or anything.
She wasn't even there from accounts. She was the help desk.
Yeah, we all this walk rubbish.
I know.
You know, anyway,
No, you're
anyway,
right.
Rachel Reeves, coming to that again. Right, she's on about. She was in an interview about putting more money into people's pockets, right?
Yeah.
But it's what I can't understand. She's on about putting the tax up, council tax up.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? She's on about coming your private pension and your savings in your ISA. How's that going to happen if she does that?
Well, apparently the ISA thing is they're trying to take it out of that and make you put it in the ISA stocks and shares to stimulate the economy. Because you remember she went on our
How about starting with her then?
How about what?
Rachel from accountants.
What?
How about starting with her then?
How
She'll
about-
have a private pension and stuff like that.
You speak Northern. What is he
Do
saying?
you know what I mean, no, pal?
No. What did you
No,
say?
we don't know what you mean. Say it again.
Rachel Reeves what?
Do it again.
Right. She's on about putting council tax up, yeah?
Yeah.
Who?
Right. She's on about coming for your private pension and your savings in your ISA.
Who?
Your ISA account. Right. She's on about coming for that, yeah?
Right, yeah.
So how is she going to put more money into people's pockets if she's doing that?
Right.
Nobody can afford what about that. Now do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean now, yeah. I understand it perfectly. Well, she's raiding all of your money, isn't she, to waste it on stupid projects like that Batcave.
It's the biggest tax take ever. It used to be in 70 years, but now they've taken it to a whole new level. It's a record. I mean, this is unbelievable. I mean, we're all starving and freezing to death.
Right, I know.
No, not in here. It's absolutely boiling in here. It's disgusting,
Put
isn't it?
another bar on the fire. Anything else, Tony?
Anyway, I just want to say good show anyway, brilliant. Anyway, can I...
Tony, have you been to the pub tonight?
Yeah, I've had a couple.
Have you really? That's a surprise.
How much is a pint in your local, Tony?
Pardon?
How much is a pint in your local?
Just about 3-4, then I'll come home then.
Really?
No, how much is it? How much does it cost?
A couple of cans when I do come home, actually.
So you had 4 pints in the pub.
£3.50 a pint?
3 cans when you came home.
Not that much.
Right, so you've had 7 pints. That's not that much.
It's only just started.
Can I ask you a question?
Did you have any beer nuts?
No, stop. I want to ask you a serious question, honest question.
I just think it's a brilliant show. This. I can't decide who's the best one. Either you lot, James Will, Kevin O'Sullivan, or Mike Graham, and stuff like that. I can't decide who's best.
But we want to work out. We want to work out how many ales you've had tonight. So first of all, what did you have in the pub? What pint was it?
He's a bitter man. You're a bitter man, aren't you?
No, it was Stella Artois.
You had Stella. Now you had four. You had four of those, Tony, didn't you? Didn't have three.
I've had a bit more than that.
You had a lot more than that.
So okay, because when you say you're 3 or 4, that means 5, doesn't it? Really?
A bit more than that. Plus, when he went home, he had a few chinnies.
Yeah. So nobody buys 2 cans; they always buy 4 cans. And I bet there was none in after last night, was there? So I reckon you're on about 9.
Last night, yeah.
Is there still the Guinness crisis going on where you can't get Guinness?
I think it's brilliant, actually.
My uncle used to drink at the commercial in Great Harwood.
Go on, in Great Harwood. My mate lives in Great Harwood and all, actually, to be honest.
Brilliant. Yeah. Okay. Well, you know, my brother used to be a DJ at Lardy Dars.
Did you ever go? Did you ever go down Lardy Dars?
Lardy's.
I've heard of it. Yeah. What's his name anyway?
On Chip Butty night.
My brother's called Dominic Walker. He was a presenter on 2BR. And he was a DJ. Yeah, he was a presenter on 2BR.
It's like peas in a pod. Him in his.
And he used to go. He used to DJ. It wasn't called Lardy Dars in those days. It was called Eclipse.
Oh, but yeah, I know you mean.
The Eclipse.
Do you remember the what was it called?
It was in Coventry.
There was Heaven and Hell as well in Burnley.
Evans down the road, isn't it? Yeah.
Utopia and
Utopia.
Yeah, Utopia, but before that though.